Oh. I'd particularly like to welcome all the members of the committee, the officers, and especially members of the public who are attending in the chamber and those watching at the webcast at home or work. It's really great when people come to City Hall to see democracy in action and play their part. So welcome to everyone in the public gallery. Welcome to members of the committee. My name is Councillor Ed Plowden. I'm chair of this committee, and I'm going to go around and ask members of this committee to introduce themselves. I'm actually going to start with Jonathan because you're subbing for somebody today.
Yes, thank you, Chair. Jonathan Hacker, Councillor for Southville, Stockwood. And, we're expanding our reach, and I'm subbing for Graham Morris. Thank you.
Councillor Tim Rippington from Brislington East.
Don Alexander, Avonmouth, Lawrence Weston.
Councillor Kaz Self, Southmead.
And Nicholas Coombs, Westbury and Henleys.
Councillor Emma Edwards, Bishopston and Ashley Down Ward.
Councillor David Wilcox from Lockleys Ward.
Rob Breyer, Councillor for St George West.
Thank you all. The emergency evacuation procedure: in the event of an alarm sounding and there is none planned, no drill planned, please leave the room quietly via the lobby area, through the main front door of City Hall, turn right, walk down the ramp towards the cathedral, and the assembly point is at the front of the cathedral. As you now know, we've received apologies from Councillor Morris, and he is substituted by Councillor Hucker. Can I ask committee members if they have any interest to declare in relation to the items of business on the agenda? Any interest will be recorded in the minutes. That's a nil return. We have the minutes of the previous meeting. I move the minutes of the previous meeting of the committee held on the 11th of September as a correct record. Would anyone like to second that? Kaz. I content to confirm the minutes and as a correct record, and for me to sign them as chair. Okay. Since last time, Kaz, we are running an action sheet. I can send that to you if you wish. I think 8 out of 10 actions have been completed, and 2 are outstanding because they can't be completed yet. And 1 further. Okay. Right, Chair's announcements. First of all, I'd like to thank everyone for their well wishes for my mum, who had a very nasty accident last Wednesday and is recovering in hospital. So thank you, particularly to members of the committee who've extended me that thank you. We have at very short notice added 2 petitions as urgent items to the agenda. Firstly, I'd like to acknowledge and indeed congratulate the organisers of both petitions on reaching a threshold to trigger debate at this committee, which is no mean feat in itself. With the East Bristol debate, this is a secondary trigger, as we've already debated it at full council, but we've received a further 1,637 signatures from Bristol residents since that time. Secondly, I'd like to just make it clear this is the first time that this committee has had a petition that reached the threshold for a debate between the agenda briefing, where I work with party leads to agree the logistics and timing for this meeting, and the deadline for committee papers to be published. So this was a new dilemma for me. I'll learn from this situation and ensure that we have a slot on the day of the publication to work with the party leads to update any new information since the agenda briefing. I've done my best to welcome the public to this committee and to enable good debates to be heard. What we do in transport affects so many people, and we do literally set things in stone. So this is important. My intention in hearing the petitions in December was to enable a good debate where everyone, politicians and the public alike, could have time to prepare a notice to attend. I now realise that not everyone saw it this way, so I'm happy to agree to the wishes of the petitioners to have the debate sooner. So we'll do that. First, we'll take public statements from the public. We'll then go through question and answers, and then we'll move on to the 2 debates. So, I've got a bit of script here about the numbers that have been reached, but I think we just go straight on to public statements. So first of all, is George Foster Morrison here? No. Apparently, Melissa, you've asked for Sue Hughes to speak on your behalf. So, Sue, as you know, can I remind everyone that we've all read your statements. There was a lot of statements there, and we ask you to try and summarise your statement in a minute, so rather than read the whole statement out. So if you could do that, and it's a courtesy to everyone to try and keep within that minute, please, because obviously we've got quite a few statements to get through.
I find it utterly reprehensible and disgusting you have chosen to unilaterally extend the so-called trial of your unlivable neighbourhood trial for a further 6 months without discussion or vote with the public or any justification for this. This just adds to your dishonesty throughout the scheme, from the sham of a consultation to lies about disability group consultation. You are repeatedly stomping on the rights of residents, especially disabled residents. Your choice to intentionally and knowingly cause physical and psychological harm to thousands of people who are already struggling is inexcusable. The so-called trial should have ended and installations removed the moment you received evidence of harm and disability discrimination. It is only a matter of time before lives are lost from your actions, and their blood will be on your hands.
Thank you. Julie Platten? No. Dan Hudson? Christine Khalif?
No, sent to observe.
Yeah, I know. Darren Baker? Anne Dockery? Mo Diamond? Carol Casey or Nassim?
Nassim is here, but maybe a little bit.
Yeah, I know.
Councillors, we ask you to consider maintaining the prospects of cycling centre in South Bristol. We are pleased for the residents of Lawrence Western to get a new £15 million facilities, but your own report on 12th of September 2024 admits that those areas of deprivation in the south of the city will have restricted access. Lawrence Western is a deprived area, but according to your own report, JSNA 2425, the 10 most deprived neighbourhoods are all in South Bristol, with pockets of deprivation in Lawrence Western. Why is South Bristol planned to for over 3,000 new homes with 30 to 50% affordable, and yet you are taking facilities away? The deprived wards in South Bristol have a higher population than the deprived parts of North Bristol and a higher number of children. More affordable homes developed in South Bristol inevitably means more families in South Bristol. Councillors keep on saying that for the sake of 125 housing units, South Bristol must lose the only competition athletics track and the family cycling centre. Thus, this committee wants to wait until more young lives like that of Max 6 and 16 and Mason Ritz 15 be lost through knife crime before you take more serious actions. We need more physical and healthy activities available in South Bristol, not less. Your September report boasted that people would come from Cornwall and Wales to the new cycling centre, but your primary responsibility is the citizens of Bristol. What are you doing for the 18,000 children and young people in South Bristol to help them learn to cycle and enjoy better prospects in life?
Could you start to wrap it up now? That's a couple of minutes. I know that you wanted some extra time, so...
There are alternative sites for housing. You can save the Whitchurch track and cycling centre for the benefits of children and families now and for future generations. We strongly urge this committee to hold the closure of the South Bristol Cycling Centre. Thank you.
Thank you, Nassim. Linda Keys. David Ridgewell. David, if you can try and keep it to a minute, please. You know the form.
I'll summarise very quickly. I'm going to say it. The big issue is going to be the transport levy and making sure we got the money to run the buses. If we don't put that money into WECA have, West End Combined Authority, and North Somerset have no precepting powers. That's the only way, plus the bus grant from UK central government. So if we don't go down that line, we're in big trouble. You put a lot of buses on, Ed. You and Tim have done extremely well, but they can come off if we don't find the resources. So could a lot of local services across the city region. This is a serious situation. I just urge you to work with WECA to find a solution and the other 4 unitary authorities. On bus infrastructure, well, I've spoken to John outside the meeting. We're still getting problems on the bus stands. What's happened is they've put all the buses to each district on one stand, Ed, in the city centre. They jammed the stands up. So I came off today, we had the 8, the 9, the 5, all on the same stand. I'm in a wheelchair. There's too many buses on each of the stands now for people to generally, with passengers reduced mobility, get off the stands. Can that be reviewed with WECA and the City Council? And on the issues of livable neighbourhoods, I'm not against livable neighbourhoods, let's be clear here. But what we've got to do is work the way through London's done it, talking about improve public transport, improving working with the communities and bringing it on board. But where the Mayor in London's done it, in London boroughs, they've actually put public transport access in first, worked it through, and very carefully worked out how they put the schemes on the ground. The community is very important. Thank you.
Thanks, David. Next is Alison Bramwell, but I believe Evie Loiseau is speaking.
We thank the Chair for giving us this opportunity to present our petition at this meeting. Southville residents have spent the last few weeks campaigning to ensure neighbours, friends, family and local businesses are aware of the South Bristol Liveable neighbourhood and the impact it will have on them. We have been encouraging people to speak up and get their voices heard through various channels, including this meeting. Why? Because this council has delivered an unlawful public consultation about the South Bristol Liveable neighbourhood. Residents do not have sufficient information to understand how these proposals will impact them. The council is denying people's right to provide adequate responses to this consultation. We do not have any information on how many car parking spaces will be lost, how many vehicles will be displaced onto North Street and Coronation Road, or what the journey impacts will be for people. The consultation material is inaccurate and misleading. We have maps that do not have the correct road layouts. The survey is full of bias, contains misleading imagery, and uses inaccessible language. Under Section 149 of the Equality Act 2010, this council must show due regard to how this scheme will affect those with protected characteristics, including age, disability, gender, pregnancy, and socio-economic status. The equality and impact assessment for this consultation fails to meet statutory requirements. I could go on, but in the interest of time, I will leave you with this. Residents deserve honesty and accountability from the council. We deserve to understand what these proposals mean and how they will impact our community. It is not okay to have a suck it and see approach for the scheme which will cost millions in public funds. The council must immediately stop this deeply flawed consultation. We are calling for an independent review to assess the evidence it claims justifies the need for the South Bristol Liveable neighbourhood proposals.
Thank you. Hayden Gill.
Hi, evening. We've heard from citizens across Bristol about their concerns on reducing traffic in their neighbourhood. As someone from East Bristol, I'd suggest jump on the bus and just have a look at Barton Hill, because you'll see the transformation that can take place. You can't put a price on saying good morning to your neighbours in the street. The point of the bus gates and bollards is car drivers don't listen. They don't obey double yellow lines. They don't obey speed limits. And they don't keep their cars off the pavement. Asking nicely has never worked. I wasn't consulted on cars getting bigger, like the Land Rover so high a 9-year-old can't be seen at the front of it. I wasn't consulted on drivers parking their cars on the pavement, preventing me and others from using the pavement. I wasn't consulted on Google Maps and Waze, directing drivers through my neighbourhood just to save a few seconds off their journey. The Liveable neighbourhood is about people of Bristol fighting back against the car industry, against inconsiderate drivers, and against American tech companies. Surely everyone in this room would agree with that cause. Thank you.
Thank you. Kelly Smallcombe. Meg Smith.
Thank you. So if councillors and officers are not familiar with things like the UN agenda and the World Economic Forum's level of influence that they're having on every single government in the world, then whilst in good faith they have one part of the puzzle and try to create good infrastructures, there's a lot more of the puzzle that they're missing. And unless people know what that bigger picture is and where this all leads, then they won't know how that one piece they're placing fits in with the bigger scheme of things. Livable neighbourhoods, low traffic neighbourhoods, or 15-minute cities, they're all the same. And they're known as smart cities. And as such, a lot of technology is involved in creating them. Funding for Bristol's livable neighbourhoods comes from WECA, West of England Mayoral Combined Authority, which is the start of devolution. Comes down from Westminster to a combined authority mayor who will have overall say on what happens in ever-increasing areas. With orders coming from Davos, this leaves no scope for local residents to fight back on any number of global initiatives once it gets started. If people are actually enticed by giving up their roads to parklets, planters and cycle hangars, then maybe they should look at the Oxford-style restrictions where residents are only allowed to leave their portion of the city up to 100 days a year or face large fines. How much say will Bristol Council have with just one person, the combined authority mayor, maybe not the one in present position, but the ones to come, in control, they themselves controlled by a higher up chain than Westminster itself? The other pieces of the puzzle that are coming are as innocuous as having
Can you
everything
start
within
to
a
wrap that up,
15-minute
please?
city. They include digital ID, central bank digital currencies, blockchain technology, net zero carbon credits and 5G. And it's how these all link together that's the important part, and especially the AI that controls them.
Thank you. Joe Sargent.
Good evening. I'm here to just say a few words about the workplace parking levy, which might represent a pleasant change of subject for some. And I work for an organisation called West Act, and I'm part of a campaign known as Reclaim Our Buses. And we just wanted to comment in to say that we're supportive in principle of the implementation of a workplace parking levy, because we recognise that we need to find funding opportunities for better public transport. However, we do have some concerns, and we just want to make sure that these concerns are considered before any scheme is adopted. So first of all, around management of expectations, without substantial capital from the Treasury, revenue from a workplace parking levy won't fund a mass transit scheme. The last Labour government funded a trans scheme in Nottingham to the tune of £167 million, and there was a further £437 million available in PFI credits. And this was all before their workplace parking levy came into place. The other concern is around the significance of boundaries, and just to ensure that we're all aware that Bristol isn't an island, and we have neighbours in the west of England who rely on our economy and we rely on theirs. We need to work closely with them and consider a single overarching project whilst recognising the region's diversities. Transport inequity across the region has got to be taken into consideration, and the impact of a workplace parking levy on those travelling from areas with poor or even non-existent alternatives to car should be mitigated. And the impact of a workplace parking levy could be disproportionate on communities where parking is already problematic on the streets. So yeah, I mean, we are supportive. It sounds a bit negative what I'm saying, but I just think it's really important that we get this right, and we look forward to hearing about the project as it develops. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Satyan Joshi.
So, by releasing this design and consultation as in its current guise for the SBLN, I think you've woken up the hibernating, sleeping majority, a person like me who lives in Southville, who is not really interested in engaging in politics or the platitudes that we get, which come our way all the time. But in summary, you leave me with no option but to release a few truths, as it were. And the first truth is that Southville is already a livable neighbourhood. The second truth is that the RPZ in Southville has already dealt with most of the parking issues. It's not perfect, but it's not far off. The third issue, and contrary to popular belief, residents in Southville actually care about the environment. We walk, we cycle, we recycle. So any gains you're going to get from this SBLN is marginal at best. And the final truth is there has been no proof offered whatsoever that somehow Southville's being populated by a rat run and that traffic exists in all its commuter roads and that children are getting asphyxiated with murderous pollution. So the whole basis on which this SBLN is founded is simply on a bed of untruths. Now, with truth comes courage.
Can you start to wrap it up now? Because we're running over time.
As I look to you, sir, my humble pleas is that it's no bad thing to admit that this SBLN is a imposition that is completely and utterly flawed. So I humbly request you to have a good, long, hard think about progressing this scheme. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you. Next, I have Sue Hughes.
Oh, she's spoken.
Terry Brammer.
Yes, thank you. I didn't realise I only had a minute, so I'll do the best I can. These severe restrictions that you've decided, or the SBLN has decided to enforce upon us under the guise of designing safer and quieter streets to encourage people to walk and cycle and wheel, well, this is already how we live. And unfortunately, this scheme, in an area that is, as Satyen has said, really livable as it stands, is fueling, and this is from personal experience, for talking to people in the street, my neighbours, my friends, polarisation and vehemence, confusion, despair, and certainly frustration. Few of us, so it seems to me anyway, use cars unless we really need to, certainly in Southville, and generally more these days. Now, if you've got a car in the RPS zone, you pay a hefty rate. It's doubled from what it was. Now, I don't know whether you realise, because you may not live in Southville, but at night it's jam-packed. I know, I live there. I have a car. And if I dare to go out at night or any time close to the early evening, I come back and I can't park. Occasionally, maybe yes, but generally no. And that means I have to drive around releasing more fumes. Wherever it is, I'm driving around to find a parking space. That is not healthy. So you can't remove spaces. That's just not going to work. If we've got cars, it's because we need them.
Should we, if there's any last thing you want to wrap it up with? But
I want to state shorter journeys. It states this is going to bring about shorter journeys. It can't. Just think about it. I won't even go on about that one. That's nuts. And you talk about cleaner air. Well, if you think that displacement of traffic results in cleaner air, I don't know what you're talking about, because to me that sounds very and utterly selfish. It cannot work. So I would also like to just point out that for the orange zone, we're all going to have to exit onto Coronation Road. That's not going to work if something happens to Coronation Road. We're stuck. And the fines that will ensue will mess everybody up. So I'll end on that. Thank you.
Thank you. Terry Brammer? Oh, sorry. Caroline Dunn. Caroline, if you can try and stick to a minute, that would be helpful.
I will try, but I am not well today. I will do my best. This is Disability Hate Crime Awareness Week. Not publicised, but the council raised a flag to it. I feel that the councillors themselves should be educated about it so that they realise that the impact of committee decisions can have exactly the same impact as hate crime and sometimes appear as such. This is in both large and small matters. The Transport Committee in particular, I feel, should consider the outcome of their decisions because while presumably unintentional, the outcome of many decisions has hit the disabled people of Bristol very hard indeed. As a large matter, the extension of the EBLN situation for many people is the equivalent to a psychological assault. Unintended consequences this may be, but its consequences we all suffer from. The civilization level of a society, in my opinion, rests on how compassionately it treats its vulnerable and disabled people, and on that basis this regime fails. And when we tell you what you could do to make things better, you don't listen to us, even on the small things. Overton Road's disabled space to replace one outside Boots when the bus lane operates has finally been replaced with one even further away, up a steep slope, non-regulation size being far too small, with car doors opening onto bollards. To get up there, you also have to sometimes avoid flying bikes. I'm frequently having people, disabled people particularly, complaining to me about bikes going far too fast and also about bikes being on pavements. And meanwhile, we are throwing away decades of road usage and regulation, long hours in the House of Commons, getting us decent legislation, including, I'd like to point out, equalities legislation. And yet we are just throwing this away, and we are, one hopes inadvertently, making Bristol actually a great deal more dangerous, and in particular for disabled people. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Caroline. Brendan Taylor.
Thanks, Chairman. I will try and keep this to a minute at least. I'm usually quite calm at these meetings, and I'm not going to try and blame anyone here, but to be honest, I'm absolutely disgusted at the state of the bus services. Yes, we are doing better with night bus services running on weekends, but we are under threat of losing that from next year. We have to find £15 million by April to keep these bus services running. If we don't find this money, a lot of bus services like the Y8, the Y2C, the 25 in Bristol that goes via St Werburgh's will be cut. I also want to add that the night bus services need to keep running. I understand that these are funded by the Clean Air Zone from the money that we're at from the Clean Air Zone, but this funding needs to be found and it needs to keep running throughout 2026. As a wheelchair user, I rely heavily on these night buses so I can have some sort of a social life. And I find it absolutely disgusting that we're looking at cutting bus services rather than funding them. Doug Clarenbold and Rob Pinn are not miracle workers. They want to run a service, but they cannot run a service without the help and financial support from the West of England Combined Authority. We also have concerns on Metro West services, such as the lift at Lawrence Hill Station being installed, the Henbury line, and I also want to add disabled people should be able to use their concession pass on local Metro West services to Severn Beach and Weston-super-Mare, so they've got more flexibility in their travel.
Thanks. Thanks, Brendan. Samira Moose?
Sorry, it was just questions that Samira.
Okay. Is there anyone here who's submitted a statement that hasn't had a chance to speak? I've got to the end of my list of all the people that said they were going to be here today. Okay, Shall we move on to questions? So questions have been submitted. Each questioner has had a written reply, and that's been published. So what we do is we assume that people have been able to see that reply, and we take supplementary questions, up to 2 oral supplementary questions if you've asked 2 or more questions. It really must arise out of your original question. You can't introduce something new. I've got a number of people who have said that they are attending to observe, so I'm going to just go through the people who've actually said that they're here and actually want to ask a supplementary question. So first up is Melissa Topping.
Yeah. Thank you for confirming the long timeline from my question. However, you have repeatedly failed to cite the specific legal justification for continuing the traffic regulation order. Can the officer state explicitly, and for the record, has the council received specific current legal advice confirming that continuing data collection for a scheme demonstrably increasing risk and restricting essential services for protected groups legally satisfies the PSED? If the answer is yes, will that legal advice be published immediately, or are we to conclude that the continuation of this TRO is currently running without PSED compliance? Thank you.
I'm not sure. Adam, do you want to answer that?
Yeah, we haven't taken any specific legal advice. The TROs that are in place are permanent TROs. The trial is assessing data collected over a period of time. At the end of that trial, a decision is then made as to whether the scheme remains permanent or whether those TROs are then undone.
Right, okay. Well, the consultation was on a 6-month trial. So can you please explain how you are legally continuing that for a further 6 months when that initially was based on disability discrimination? It is based on lies.
So I would disagree with the assertion about disability discrimination and lies. The TRO was consulted on and enacted appropriately as per the legal requirements. We set out that we're doing a 6-month assessment of the data. It takes time then to collate that data and do that assessment, and during that time the scheme will remain in place until a decision is made.
Thank you. Alison Bramall. Just scroll to make sure you can see the answers on the screen there. Did you have any, Alison, did you want to ask any follow-up questions? No, okay. Sue Hughes, would you, you've said that you're attending to observe, but would you like to ask any follow-up questions? If we could scroll through. Do you want to have a moment to read that and I'll move on, or we? Yeah. Next is David Redgewell. So, was Sue, were you still reading?
I've got a paper copy, I'll be there in a moment.
Okay. We just get you a paper copy, Sue, and we'll move on to Dave for now. These were published last night. Caroline, while we're just waiting for people to catch up, you did ask questions. I'm not sure why they were mislaid. It was a mistake. The answers will be given to you as soon as possible and published alongside the other answers. And I'm very happy to offer you a reserved slot to be first to ask questions at the next meeting, if that suits you. So I'd like to apologise, but we haven't got answers for you now, and we're not going to be able to answer those on the fly. I'll read those questions for you now. Apparently, Bristol City Council is trying to get rid of eye points at passenger interchange hubs, railway and bus stations, etc. This is essentially another damaging event for the independent living of disabled people, many of whom rely on them for bus and rail information, etc. This is... Okay, this is about removal of eye points, and that this is a damaging event for the independent living of disabled people who rely on them for bus and rail information. Especially true of blind and partially sighted people. And Carol, I think you want to know why we're doing that. Is that a fair summary? Thank you. Question 2. When are we going to get external lifts to a road crossing over the Portway so disabled and elderly people can cross over to Shirehampton safely? Shirehampton train station, not just safely, but able to cross at all. And question 3 is the EBLN got a petition debated by BCC. I think you're asking why aren't we hearing it? Is that right? Or are you asking why aren't we hearing the petition? Oh, no, it's about extending that. So we'll get you an answer. It's extending the period of EBLN. So we'll get you an answer to that one as well. I think we've heard about that from other people already. Understood. Sue, was it? Did you have a follow-up question?
But in the answer that all properties are fully accessible by all vehicles at all times, which is just completely not true. We've provided evidence of that.
What do you propose to do about that immediately so that all vehicles can access all properties at all times?
Say that the scheme as designed is designed to enable access to all properties at all times. If there are specific issues that you want to send to us, we can look into those for you.
We've got much evidence of vehicles unable to access streets via the legal means. We've provided that evidence to you. Why are you ignoring it?
We haven't ignored anything. We respond to the stuff that is sent to us. It may disagree with what you believe to be the case.
Disagree with videos of scaffold trucks reversing up streets, fire engines having to reverse up streets.
Melissa, if you want to send those questions again and that evidence again, and if you want to copy me in, then we'll look into it for you. David.
Yeah, try not to share it with everybody this time.
So I'm aware of the answer, except I'm in a wheelchair, guys. I'm in a wheelchair. I can't do what you can do. So if a bus pulls in the middle of the road in Broad Quay, which happened the other day, trying to get to meet Helen Goodwin and your colleagues at WECA, I can't parachute myself into the middle of Broad Quay and get on that number 70 bus. I can't do it, right? You're playing games with First Group. Be honest, Qualities Act. Those buses are parking up there. They are taking layover there. Your officers sitting down in WECA offices and these offices and agreeing all this stuff. There's no passenger engagement. There's no engagement with the qualities people. Where Ed, we need to go through a proper discussion with the bus service advisory panel, which I sit on. And we need to find an answer. What I want to know is, what are you going to do to make this work? I cannot fly into the middle of a road with a bus there. I've complained to First Bus. I've complained to First Group headquarters. It's got to be resolved. Disabled people are not able to join buses at many...
So the question, I think the question is, what are we going to do?
I'm just getting answers, or officer answers, about people that are able-bodied. I'll be honest, and I'm not happy with it. And I don't disrespect your officers.
I think the answer is that we have to continue to try and work through this with WECA and with the First Bus and the groups that we have with which to engage with the public. And
Ed, you're a Vice Chair of Western Gateway. You're involved with the panel. Can we have a panel item with WECA's bus advisory panel, with your officers coming on trying to find some answers. That's all I'm going to ask.
I obviously can't really commit WECA resources at this meeting,
Can you
we'll...
raise it? That's all I'm going to ask.
Okay, yes. If you want to make an action for me to raise that, and we'll put that on the log.
So, the other question I want to raise is, well, you've heard it from most of us in this room. We are extremely worried about the funding of the bus network, I say. Compliments to you for putting the buses back, yourself personally and Tim and the officer team and with WECA and the other 4 unitary authorities. But we're at a cliff edge. Unless we get this money, First Group and Stagecoach aren't financially viable as a business, nor is Big Lemon, without large sums of public money from the West of England Combined Authority.
Can you turn this into a question, Dave?
Yeah,
because
so
I think we want to get onto the debate.
What action is the council going to take with the other unitary authorities to put this out to budget consultation, the raise of the transport levy, and what is it going to do to raise with the MPs and the Secretary of State to make sure we get that bus grant we desperately need for the combined authority and into the surrounding Somerset, Gloucestershire, Wiltshire areas? Thank you.
The answer is we're every bit as worried as you are, and we're doing everything we can. Funding is tight, and we're trying to find the funding. So, is there anyone here who's asked a question who hasn't yet? Where are we?
Yeah, Brendan.
No, we've got Joe as well. Joe Sargent and then Brendan.
Yeah.
Joe.
Hi, thank you for the answers. I just want to ask, firstly, when you say you're working with WECA, does that include actually working with the other unitary or local authorities? Because going up and then back down again isn't necessarily always the best option. Sometimes you need to go side to side. So that was the first question. And then regards to the second one around location of workplace parking levies, it's great that you're focusing on the city centre, but I think, can I ask or request that you are really sure about the access for all people who live in the WECA region, definitely, to locations in the city centre, because whilst the buses are better going into the city centre than they are other places, they're not necessarily great for everyone. That was a question, I think.
I think the answer is yes. I quite regularly am in contact, and I think our officers are regularly in contact with other unitary authorities. We don't just do everything through WECA. And the second one, I'm going to offer an answer which is very early days yet. We've got a lot of modelling and studying to do of the workplace parking levy. We will be working with the business community, especially to make sure that we model all, what I want to do is make sure the business community is, in particular, with whom we need to work, because this is a levy on them, is agrees what we will model. So we don't have a situation where we have people asking, maybe we could have modelled something else. I don't know if you want to add anything to that.
Just to say, obviously, the city centre is the most accessible part of the region and the city. We have park and rides, we have rail stations with car parks. We've got lots of bus services, lots of cycle routes that all feed into the city centre. A workplace parking levy is typically paid for by the employer, and it's up to them to decide whether they charge it to the employee or not. So there's lots of ways that an employee would not necessarily be disadvantaged by this.
The last one on my list is Brendan.
Thanks, Ed. Working alongside David Whitwell, I'm just going to get straight to the point. I know what the answers will probably be, but I just wanted to ask the question. The first question I had is, and I can see the answer up there. I know the X14 is not funded by Bristol City Council, it is funded by North Somerset Council. But if we could get in contact with Hannah Young and get her to answer that question, that would be good. One of the questions I do have for you is, why are you removing the eye points from the Metro bus stop? how are people meant to buy tickets? Because drivers cannot sell tickets on the bus. And yes, we have this tap on, tap off, but not everyone uses cards or feels comfortable using the tap on, tap off system. So if you remove the eye points and people can't buy tickets on the bus, does that mean everyone gets a free ride, does it? Because that's how it's looking. Is that how desperate you are for money, that you're removing eye points to try and find some extra funding? Because that's what it feels like. And question number 2, what are we doing about the night bus services? We've only got funded until April 2026. More hospitality is going to be opening up. The world just doesn't stop in 2026. More hospitality is going to open up. We need to find funding, and we need to find it now. The night bus services can't just stop. We need to work with the West of England Combined Authority to find funding for those buses to run. And the final question is...
Brendan, you get 2 questions.
Oh.
Your first one was about eye points. I think the important thing is that, I think we've answered it already, which is that we're actually currently seeking views from Metrobus users on how they use eye points, and no decision has been made yet. So please do make sure that you put your viewpoints across. The second question, I think we've kind of already answered Dave's question, which is we're doing everything we can to make sure that we continue to find the funding to keep the buses that are currently supported by the public purse going. And on your first point, I'm very happy, just to prove what I said to Joe earlier, to forward on your question to Hannah Young in North Somerset. Thank you.
Thank you for that.
I'm going to move us on now to the petition debates. We are skipping forward to agenda item 15. We have up to 20 minutes. The purpose of this report is to consider and debate the petition Stop Southville Roadblocks as presented. Petitions, this has basically reached a trigger of 1,870 signatures to date as verified, of which 1,510 were from Bristol residents. That was verified as of the 15th of October 2025. I have seen it's gone above that. We have 5 minutes for the petitioner to speak, and then 15 minutes for the debate amongst councillors in turn, according to numbers of representation. So, who is going to speak? You have 5 minutes. Alison.
Hi, thank you. Forgive my shaky voice. I'm a bit of a nervous public speaker. Firstly, I'd like to thank the chair for letting us present today. It means a lot to us to be able to participate in the discussion. My name is Alison Bramall, and I've lived in South Bristol for 18 plus years and on Stackpool Road for 16 years. Ironically, that is long enough to remember when there used to be a public bus that came down Stackpool Road and through Southville. Now, wouldn't that be nice? For context, I cycle to North Bristol for work, my husband walks to work, my daughter takes the bus to sixth form college, and my son walks to secondary. You might think I would be the ideal supporter of the council's Liveable Neighbourhood proposals, and yet here I am, the lead petitioner for the Stop Bristol Southville Roadblocks campaign. A few weeks ago, a small group of objectors met with James and his boss from the Bristol City Council engagement team to discuss alternative scheme ideas. In this meeting, I said to James, can you explain what pro-cycling measures your proposal is putting forward in Southville, i.e., where are you putting the cycle lanes? He then told me that the only thing they are proposing is to reduce the traffic so that all roads in Southville are safe to cycle on. Then he said, we need to reduce the traffic on the roads to a level that an 8-year-old can cycle on the road. Well, as I said, I have 2 children, and they were both cycling on at 8 years old on the roads as they are, and even younger, and loads of their friends were the same. In fact, I still see 8-year-olds cycling up and down Stackpool Road every day on their way to and from school. What I think this story represents is a sentiment that I've been hearing so many people say. Southville is not broken. The roads are quiet, the people walk and cycle a lot. Families walk and cycle a lot, probably more than many other parts of the city. And we love a community event too. We have street parties, the Tobacco Factory Market, Upfest, and the Lantern Parade. We have all these while still allowing our residents to make essential car journeys easily without having to take long detours or sit in idling traffic. We started this petition because the council kept saying to us, "You asked for this. We consulted you and this is what you wanted." And we thought, hang on a minute, you asked us if we liked trees and nice public spaces and if we didn't like speeding cars and pollution. You never said, do you want your streets blocked up? Would you like to not be able to access your local shops easily by car? Would you like to make it more difficult for emergency services to reach your house? No, this is not what we asked for. The council's own engagement report tells us that there are 3 top concerns raised in Southville: lack of parking, speeding traffic, and lack of crossings, none of which were addressed in the council's proposal. In fact, I find the proposed design uninspired and lacking in rigor. It lazily applies livable neighborhood principles to our neighborhood without understanding how residents use the roads, without understanding our boundary roads, without understanding South Bristol factors such as events at Ashton Gate Stadium, the crumbling riverbank, the clean air zone, the redevelopment of the Western Harbour, and the changes coming to Bedminster Bridge, without understanding the disruption it could cause for people's lives. We are here to tell you that what Bristol City Council has proposed is not good enough. The opposition campaign is filled with so many brilliant and passionate people. Please don't dismiss them. Please read their questions and listen to their comments and ideas. In them, you will find the voice of Southville. We come to you today with this petition to say that we already live in a livable neighbourhood. Can we please scrap the roadblocks and just have the improvements we asked for? Traffic calming, more cycle infrastructure, better parking, and safer crossing and junctions. Please, let's keep Southville moving. Thank you.
Thank you, Alison. We now have councillors will debate this. If members can be brief, I'd like to try and make time so that everyone has a chance to speak if they want to, but for the moment I'm going to go through each party in turn and ask for one person to say something each. So first up is the Green representative. I think, Emma, you were going to say something.
Thank you, Chair. And thank you. I have been listening intently to everything you've been saying, and thank you for bringing this, because I don't live in South Bristol anymore. I've looked at the maps and sort of I'm getting an idea of what it looks like. I can tell in my area it's a bit of a paradox, because in my area everybody wants a livable neighbourhood, and you know it's not happening yet. We've had areas of our area which have been done and people love living there, a bit like what you were just saying about how, you know, this is how Southville is. But then other areas, since that's been done, have been worse. And so this idea of doing a much bigger area seems to be a really important part of any livable neighbourhood scheme. And I've heard you talking about Southville, but this is a very, very big area. And so I'm imagining it's having to take the whole thing into account. I mean, more generally about livable neighbourhoods, I mean, obviously this has been a controversy, you know, since certainly the last couple of years. And, you know, sometimes it's like, well, why are we even doing this? You know, we have days like that. But this isn't, let me finish. So, the reason we are doing this is because for those years before, certainly before the Greens got in, we were going to Lambeth, we were speaking to Oxford, we were speaking to Waltham Forest, we were going to these places where they said they are really unpopular at first, and by the end of it, everybody, I mean, somebody mentioned, in those areas, so somebody mentioned Oxford, and I'm just looking up at the Oxford thing, 83% satisfaction, a 56% increase in business for businesses there, 23 new businesses opened on the main road in the East Oxford livable neighbourhood, and 56% of people backed the initiative once it had been put in. So there is a little bit. So what I will also say is we are looking at how things are now, and you're looking at how things are now. And there is, you know, we could kick this down the road, but the truth is Bristol is growing. There is going to be more developments, which means there's going to be more cars. There's going to be more pollution. And if we don't put these in now, then in 20 years, when the city is absolutely gridlocked with cars, people are going to ask us why we didn't do anything about it now. And I know that there is the argument about putting in, more active travel, more buses, but we are doing that. We've already putting in more dedicated bus lanes, and this is going to help those cycle routes. So, I can look. I'm just going to get through this, okay? Because I can feel the strength of feeling in the room. This is not a done deal. This is the middle of the consultation. Already, changes have been made from the first part of the consultation. So the first part of the consultation was made, and then changes were made. So please, just engage in that consultation and put those views into it. I'm done, thank you.
So next is someone speaking on behalf of the Labour group.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. Just one of us will speak. Thank you, petitioners, for taking time to be here today, especially on such short notice. I do think it's concerning that despite the move to a supposedly more democratic system, this council seems to be making some of its most controversial decisions without a committee vote or discussion. For example, licences for dog walkers in parks, pulling out of council housing developments, which was a decision worth 92 million, creation of a new executive director post to the tune of over £200,000. Those are examples, and now the South Bristol Liveable Neighbourhood. The council should always try to do things with communities, not to them, and the same goes for those voicing concerns about a flagship policy. Petitioners could have been asked if they wanted to defer this debate until December, but I don't believe I believe that decision was made for them rather than consulted on, and this petition has the required number of signatures, and it was submitted before the deadline, so it should have been up to you whether you wanted to defer it or not. But we are here now, so that's good. These Liveable Neighbourhood schemes are the most controversial schemes in Bristol, and in nearly 18 months since the election, this committee hasn't specifically discussed them once. If you look at the public forum today, these aren't ideological objections. These are well thought out, reasonable objections from people who think their lives will be negatively affected by this. Just to be clear, this is not an issue solely for Southville. People in my ward email me a lot about the East Bristol scheme, and South Bristol councillors in other areas have had a number of people raise the South Bristol scheme with them. So a councillor's first duty is to Bristol rather than their ward, which is why the committee and I spent an afternoon recently visiting various bridges across the city, including Southville. So I'm not happy, to be honest, to be told that we're only getting involved for political reasons. We all want to see the best solutions implemented here to achieve shared goals. And I do think most people welcome the aims of the scheme. Everybody wants safer streets, improved cycling routes, and less rat running. But I don't know whether so-called modal filters, bollards and planters are always going to be the best way to achieve it. Within the SBLN scheme, the match day parking is certainly welcome and needs to be a priority, but the different zones clearly need a rethink. Rat running is an issue on some of the roads, but solving this by the balkanisation of Southville is a bit like using a sledgehammer to bang in a nail. We think we should be looking at new technologies and how we can better use them to achieve some of these aims. So in their current form, Labour councillors will not support these proposals. And I hope the council leadership takes your concerns seriously and addresses them. We'll continue to listen to local residents and provide constructive challenge where it's appropriate for us to do so. Thank you.
Nick.
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, I'm a little confused about where this has come from, to be honest. I've only been on the council for 18 months, and the general rule is if a zombie project turns up, it was probably left over by the last Labour administration. And so if we have been here for all that time, I would have appreciated a paper coming to this committee before going out to the public, launching a consultation. I think that's the right way of bringing people with you and checking that you're doing something which has support. However, the consultation is ongoing. I think the petition that we've received today is an important part of that consultation, and it should be considered alongside all of the other responses in this process. So I've had a look on our public website about what the process is, that we have the consultation closes next week, then modifications, and we definitely should be making modifications to proposals based on consultation feedback, followed by further statutory consultation as required by law on the revised proposals. I didn't see in that public-facing list where the council vote was in that hierarchy. I hope that there will be one, and I suggest that we should put that onto the list to be absolutely clear that there is a process here. There's certainly a sensation.
In this chamber, we try and listen to one another. We try not to interrupt each other, and I'd like Nick to resume, please.
So there does seem to be the impression that because a consultation is live right now, then something is going to happen at the end of it, and that a decision has already been made. Now, no decision has been made, which I think is a failing. There should have been a decision to go out to consultation, but we should also be clear that there are additional steps and there will be further decisions. And setting out this process at the beginning about how the governance works, I think will save us a lot of issues. For example, if we were doing a trial, is it going to be 6 months or 12 months? So if you get that sorted at the beginning so as people know how the process is working, then we can all work within that process and make a decision to implement, not implement, or modify at the end of it.
No, you can't. I'm sorry. I'm going to move along now to Jonathan Hucker.
Thank you, Chair. I'd like to thank the petitioners for bringing this debate, and I think that there was a lot of good, valid points made about the South Bristol Liveable Neighbourhood during public forum. I have huge reservations about it. I'm deeply sceptical about the South Bristol Liveable Neighbourhood. You only have to look at the concerns of the people that live in the East Bristol Liveable Neighbourhood area. It's very controversial. It's divided communities, and the South Bristol Liveable Neighbourhood actually covers a larger area. It goes from Ashton Vale to Totterdown, so it covers a huge area. I'm not convinced that a scheme that had to be rolled out in the middle of the night with police present is something which actually has the consent of the people. I'm concerned that it will displace traffic onto other roads. If you look at East Bristol, traffic has clearly been displaced onto Church Road and Blacksworth Road, and I'm concerned that the same thing could happen to Coronation Road. I would imagine that Coronation Road would be an absolute nightmare if this scheme is rolled out. I also have serious concerns about the impacts on emergency services, and and waste and recycling collections. I question whether this is a sensible use of taxpayers' money. I know that the scheme is funded by WECA and not Bristol City Council, but it's still taxpayers' money. I think that the council should not proceed with the implementation of the scheme until a full assessment of the impact of the East Bristol Liveable neighbourhood has been made. I think that consultation needs to be improved and should be carried out as widely as possible. In actual fact, personally speaking, I would like to see a referendum on the proposal. So I would like to give the people who actually live in the area a chance to say yes or no to this, because I do not believe that it should be imposed on them without their explicit consent.
Thank you, Jonathan. I always get a little bit worried when I hear Tories talking about referendums. It saddens me that people think this is a done deal. Nothing is further from the truth. We'll make changes. We're already making changes, and we will bring proposals to this committee, amended proposals. And for anyone that has the time, I urge them to read Tony Dyer and Christine's statement. There's many people contacting us in South Bristol who say that this doesn't go far enough. We always thought that these proposals, when we would take something from the traffic engineers, we put against people's real life experience and hopefully meet in the middle and find something better. That's what I'm hoping for. We've got about 1 minute left, and Rob Bryer's just indicated that he'd like to say something. If you can make it in about 1 minute, and then we'll move on to East Bristol.
It's a really quick point. It's just for the public record. The way that this scheme was funded, if I understand correctly, was through a budget amendment of the budget in February 2023 or 2022. I think it's 2023. At which the Labour member for Transport at that time, Mark Bradshaw, stood in that seat over there and agreed to the funding and said it was a great idea to have a livable neighbourhood in South Bristol. We also had Councillor Richard Eddy standing just over there supporting it. The Conservative Party supported funding this scheme. So to say that there's been no decision may be accurate. It is accurate. But what's not accurate is saying that they were not supportive of this when it was a general idea. And what we need to make sure, as Ed has said, is that all of the feedback that you're giving that's really useful and really valuable is included in the scheme, and that we have an opportunity to take that balanced approach and actually kind of, work on it iteratively. That's a really important aspect of these schemes.
Thank you, Rob. The recommendation now is that the Policy Committee notes, we have noted it. What happens next is that I will send a formal response to the petitioner after the meeting, and we will note some of the issues that have come out from the public themselves, and also some of the issues that members have raised. So we'll issue that to the petitioner, and we'll also publish it on the website. Right, I'm moving on to agenda item. We are moving on to agenda item 16 now. So that is a petition debate, East Bristol Liveable Neighbourhood, Halt, the East Bristol Liveable Neighbourhoods. The purpose of this agenda item is to consider and debate this petition as presented. This has previously already been to full council because it triggered I think the 3,500 trigger, and we've had a further 1,637 signatures from Bristol residents verified as of the 9th of October. So that has triggered a further debate at this committee. We have 5 minutes. Melissa, is it you that's going to present this petition, and would you like to start your 5 minutes now?
Hello. Chair, members of the committee, thank you for allowing me to address you this evening on a matter of critical importance to thousands of our residents. I'm speaking today on behalf of those thousands to demand the immediate removal of the traffic measures in Redfield, Lawrence Hill and Barton Hill, specifically the bus gates on Avonvale Road, Marsh Lane and Pale Marsh, along with the planters and bollards on Cobden Street, Barton Hill Road, Duchy Road and Victoria Avenue. Return us to the livable neighbourhood we once had. This is not a fringe concern. An official petition calling for the removal of these measures was presented to the full council in December 2024 with 3,500 signatures. That number has since doubled, and this petition now carries the overwhelming weight of 7,174 signatures, with a total of 6,333 verified signatures online. This includes 56 on paper too. Sadly, those affected whom work in the area but with a South Gloucestershire postcode are not allowed to be counted. This number does not include 78 businesses from within and boarding the scheme that have signed a statement opposing the trial also. This growing public mandate cannot be ignored. The measures, along with the way they were cruelly implemented at 3 a.m. using the force of police and security, have caused undeniable and widespread harm, creating a crisis of access and safety within our community. The restrictions have severely hampered mobility, making trips to the GP surgery, local businesses and community organisations unnecessarily arduous, if not impossible. We must open up our neighbourhood and restore equitable access for all. Furthermore, these barriers have had a profound and negative impact. Our streets are now demonstrably less safe. Antisocial behaviour and crime is rising daily. Local businesses are failing due to reduced footfall and access, and we are seeing an associated rise in mental health problems with the loss of crucial support networks for our elderly and disabled residents, many of whom are now stuck in their homes due to the physical barriers you have placed, increasing time restrictions for those who were once able to support these vulnerable people. Other parties and local organisations, including the Wellspring Settlement, are also publicly calling for an immediate end to this scheme. Most crucially, the process under which these measures were introduced is fundamentally flawed. The consultation period for the original 6-month trial involved demonstrable disability discrimination, failing to adequately and inclusively engage with local disabled groups or residents and their unique access needs. Much has not been taken into account for these protected characteristic groups that have been ignored. This trial has not complied with the Equalities Act 2010, Section 149, and does not fall in line with the government-published LTN guidelines. This unacceptable procedural failure invalidates the entire premise and continued existence of the TRO. The 6-month trial period is now officially over. Therefore, there is no justification, ethical, legal, or logistical, for these measures to remain in place a moment longer. We acknowledge that this community has long needed effective speed calming measures. The current scheme has not solved this problem. Instead, it has created new dangers and in some cases increased speeding on the shortest of residential road sections. We are not here to discuss a future for this scheme. We are here to demand its immediate end with a complete reassessment and much needed speed calming measures introduced. We urge this committee to take swift, decisive action to immediately terminate the TROs in place on these roads. Following termination, once all bus gates, planters and bollards have been urgently removed, we will be interested to engage in a full, mutually cooperative, fundamental reassessment of community needs to identify targeted and truly effective solutions that genuinely address speed and safety without restricting access to our community, opening our roads for every resident, GP patient, worker and business. A truly livable neighbourhood for all can be achieved. Will the Transport Committee please agree to a vote on this? Thank you.
Thank you, Melissa. I'm timing. This is my timer. We have a very packed agenda today, and I'm going to move us on to Rob Breyer, who's going to speak on behalf of the Green Group. I have listened to every single word that every person has said today. This is a timer. Thank you. Rob, would you like to speak?
Can I speak now? Thanks. So the petition, obviously we've seen this petition before, but the petition talks about sort of drastic changes that have been imposed without proper consultation and consideration of their full impact. There is, of course, an open consultation right now that residents and businesses can feed into, and there have, of course, been about 3 years of public discussion of this scheme. There has been and continues to be a consideration of the full impact of the scheme on communities. That will come through the consultation and through the conclusions of that consultation. And of course, there will be a vote eventually on whether to adopt a permanent scheme. So we can agree to that, the final thing that you said, immediately, because there will be, obviously, a vote on that. It would be good to hear... It would be good to hear...
Can you listen, please? I've just been accused of not listening. I'd like you to listen to the elected members talking now.
It would be good to hear what taxpayers' money, and we've got to remember where this money's come from. It's a UK government-funded pot, ring-fenced for transport schemes, what we could have better spent it on. The petition demands the development of alternative, more cost-effective and community-supported measures that will reduce congestion, improve safety and protect our local economy without the waste of public funds or disruption to our daily lives. I do not know what measures, genuinely, other than road pricing, or a much longer-term scheme, such as a tram scheme, an underground scheme on Church Road, we could introduce that would be more effective at reducing congestion in the short to medium term. If, in a response to a question about Feeder Road today being regrettably difficult to implement a protected cycling route on, the council response was, there are other routes such as the Wesley Way, which is part of the East Bristol Liveable Neighbourhood trial and has provided an improved active travel route from the east of the city to the city centre. I think there's been a lot of talk, particularly in the statements today, around roadblocks. That's been a phrase that's been repeated over and over again. And I just want to make clear, modal filters are not roadblocks. They are the opposite. They are the opposite of a blockage. They're opposite. They are enablers of sustainable travel. If you're walking...
Please could we show some respect and listen, please? I know emotions are running high, but you need to... Please, will you respect? Please, will you respect and listen?
Walking, wheeling, cycling, scooting, taking the bus, these methods, to a large extent, to a greater or lesser extent, were blocked in the community I represent before the scheme came in due to road danger. You're making me emotional. This is becoming an emotionally charged thing, this, because a lot of residents came to me ahead of this being introduced, and I'm going off-piste here, came to me to express how scared they were in their homes and on their streets. The road danger in my ward, I'm not talking about the whole scheme, but on Beaufort Road, was intolerable for the residents there, okay? So if I'm acting as their representative, I have to listen to them as well, okay? I'll listen to you, but I have to listen to what their experience of road danger was. They had vehicles smashed into. We had far too much traffic going down that road. So that is why I'm a strong advocate for this scheme, okay? So EBLN has been an enabler for safer, healthier and happier journeys for many residents. I think that's undeniable. So I'd want to turn to the range of impairment. There's a range of impairments that cause people to be disabled, and there are people who consider themselves disabled who are in favour of the scheme. The 2021 census shows that in Bristol, the proportion of disabled people without a car or van was considerably higher than for people who were not disabled. So we need to give those people better options as well for active travel, because yes, some disabled people do use active travel modes, and of course public transport. And this scheme has improved public transport. We've been able to put a new bus route through this area to better enable people to get into the city centre from where they live. The petition suggests throughout that the scheme diverts traffic onto smaller residential streets, when it does the exact opposite of this. It places traffic on roads that are wide enough to cope with it, or at least better able to cope with them. I'm not sure any road in Bristol is coping well with the volume of traffic on it currently, because there are simply too many cars on the road, and this is what the scheme aims to tackle. It aims to get people to think differently about how they travel. And that's not everyone, but it is a large number of people who could do that. I think the petition does raise some valid points, but it sadly over-eggs them. I don't think there's been a devastating impact on local businesses. But I do think, for some businesses, there has been a negative... If you listen, I'm actually explaining a nuanced position, if that's okay. I do think for some businesses there has been a negative impact, which we must as a council do better to address and do more to accommodate. And for many others there has been little to no impact. For a small number there's been a positive impact. But saying anything about how businesses have been impacted in a blanket way is just not factual. Finally, I would like to say that I have, in August and September, conducted a local informal consultation in my ward. It shows that there are mixed views on the scheme as a whole, mixed views on particular scheme measures, and a whole lot of community knowledge and understanding that produced some excellent suggestions for amendments to the scheme to improve it for residents. I'd like to thank all of the many St George West residents who engaged with my survey and contacted me. It's great that I'll be able to represent the community's wishes by asking for some of these changes to be made for any permanent scheme proposal that's come forward in the coming months. And I would just like to say, I don't bear any ill will towards the people in the public gallery. I understand how passionate you feel about this and how important it is that your voice is heard. At the same time, we must keep things in a way that we can actually engage with each other. I'm happy to meet with anyone who wants to meet.
I'm going to move us on. The Labour group now. Is someone speaking on behalf of the Labour group? Kaz, would you like to speak on behalf? Now, I really ask you that the council chamber is a room where we have an exchange of views. We ask everyone to speak and listen with courtesy and respect. We're going to hear from the Labour group now. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. And thank you to the petitioners for bringing this here today. It's important you have an opportunity to make your views heard. This petition was submitted ahead of the deadline, clearly met the signatory threshold for debate. It's been well over 6 months since it was first presented, so there's no good reason to block it. This is especially important considering the survey the council has issued does not give you this opportunity. It asks questions like, how do you travel to X, Y and Z, and how often? But not once does it ask you, what do you think? When spending all this money on more consultation, on something that's a trial, this should be a key question. And I note the public forum concerns about what constitutes a trial and what 6 months really means. I know it's felt like the council dismisses your concerns, and that's wrong, which is why we wanted this petition presented. My Labour colleagues and I have met with some of the people here today to hear you out. The concerns raised are totally valid, and your suggestions on how to improve the scheme are reasonable. It's clear that the Liveable neighbourhood isn't working in its current form. This is why we've been having engagement with the community, and we've listened to you and listened to people who like the scheme as well. And we've released some proposals of how we think the EBLN should be improved. We are continuing to listen and will soon launch our own survey, which will help us inform our views further, including on some contested parts of the scheme. Not everyone would be happy with our initial proposals, with a scheme as controversial as the EBLN, that's given. This is an attempt to reach a middle ground and bring the community together. By removing some of the planters in Barton Hill and installing AMPR cameras, we could get the best of both worlds. No rat running, but residents are able to access their homes. By turning off bus gates, the Barton Hill businesses may not lose on as much trade. These are surely worth consideration. And for any politicians who want to dismiss these concerns as just politics, I would encourage everyone to read the Wellspring Settlement Statement. The fact that an organisation for the local community is extremely concerned should set off alarm bells. They have no motive other than serving their community. Wellspring say that the feedback from the local community by the EBLN trial is being dismissed as fundamentally in opposition to the scheme, and as a result, constructive feedback is not being listened to. This is a huge cause for concern. Something needs to change. I appreciate the Greens aren't too keen on listening to Labour councillors, but I hope they will listen to the community. The Greens have already acknowledged they have to make changes to the South Bristol Liberal neighbourhood, so why can't they do the same for East Bristol, I do not know. So I hope your concerns are listened to, taken on board, and changes are made.
Thank you, Kaz. Nick.
Thank you. Okay, so unlike the South Bristol Liveable neighbourhood, we've got a paper trail on this one, so this definitely did come from the last Labour administration, approved in March 2023. 23, I've got the papers in front of me. And as is traditional of that cabinet system, it gave extensive delegation to officers over the details, and I think that is perhaps the cause of the great confusion, uncertainty about what is approved, what's got political support, and what hasn't, because that's allowed things like exactly how does the assessment work to be decided by officers as they are rightly delegated to do so by that paper. However, it gives the impression, just doing a 6-month trial and then leaving the thing in place, of permanence, that it's going to be there forever. And that's the undercurrent that there's something we don't know about has always been a problem with this scheme over the last year, the time that I've been on the council. Now, I don't own a car. I've cycled here today, as I often do. I should be an obvious supporter, especially of something called a livable neighbourhood. But I am still uncomfortable about what we're doing, and every time that we discuss this without a proper paper in front of us, I continue to be uncomfortable about what the council is doing here. So where we're at now, then, is that we have collected 6 months of data, and that is to be assessed as a paper to come to committee. That is on the forward plan for March 2026. Perhaps that decision could be brought forwards earlier. I know it takes a bit of work to write papers. We want a proper job, but does it need to take the full 6 months? We've got a meeting, 2 meetings before then. Or, if the decision is going to be a full 12 months after implementation, do we use the longer data set rather than just cut at 6 months, use the extra data that gets made in between times? So I'll conclude there saying I think lots of people want to support the ideas of livable neighbourhoods, but we have done ourselves absolutely no favours on the implementation of these 2 projects to date.
Thank you, Nick. Jonathan.
Thank you, Chair. Yes, I previously expressed many of my reservations about the South Bristol Livable neighbourhood, and those apply equally to the East Bristol Livable neighbourhood. There seems to be a great weight of public opinion that's been presented to full council. There's been a petition, there's been statements, there's been questions. So certainly the evidence that I've seen indicates that this is an unpopular scheme. I've obviously not spoken to everybody that lives in the East Bristol Liveable neighbourhood area, so I don't know whether or not it commands majority support, but the evidence that I've seen, and I have spoken to people who live in the area, seems to indicate that it doesn't. But I think there's only one way through this. I think we have to find out whether or not it commands majority support, and that means giving everybody a vote on it. If the majority say it should remain, it should remain. If the majority say that they do not support it, then it should be removed. And I think that that's the only way through this.
We've pretty much used up all the time and more, but I did see a hand from David Wilcox. So, and if anyone else wants to can you keep it really short, David? And if anyone else who hasn't spoken yet wants to say anything, then let me know.
Yeah, I'd just like to clarify a point that Councillor Self made about the initial consultation. We need to remember that was actually run under a Labour administration according to their guidelines, and we worked on that and created the scheme as a result of that, and that's the scheme that was deployed.
In fact, the TROs were made permanent and signed off before the last election, and unfortunately, in order to reverse any permanent TROs, you need to go through a TRO process again. So that's where we are. Once again, the topic of the debate, the petitioner's views, the policy committee's views will be referred to me, and I will send a formal response to the petitioner after the meeting, and that will be published on the internet. I'm going to suggest that we've already been here for some time. We have a 10-minute comfort break, if that's okay with everyone. And I look forward to seeing you in, what time is it now? So let's say 18:40 to resume this meeting. And I'd like to thank all the members of the public. You're welcome to stay. I suspect you've probably had enough already of democracy. So please do feel free to stay, but we do also feel free to leave. Thank you very much. All 10 minutes. Particularly like to thank officers for their patience. And it's going to be a long night, isn't it? So thanks, officers. Right. Agenda item 7. Management and mitigation of the CRSTS scheme delivery. I don't know if someone maybe just go and close the door. Thanks, Phil. This report, agenda item 7, is for noting only. The purpose of the report is to update on the likely short-term impacts of constructing the city region's sustainable transport settlement schemes and the mitigation measures being put in place to minimise disruption. The deadline for all the schemes is end of March 2027, but we've recently been informed that the DfT would permit some limited construction past this date up to March 2028, but their expectation is still that most funding must be spent by March 2027. We've had quite a lot of speeches and so on today, and I'm actually going to make a bit of a statement now before I invite officers to speak. CRSTS is an unprecedented £540 million investment in sustainable transport across the region. We've been working with Mayoral Combined Authority, also known as WECA, and our partner unitary authority since its announcement in 2021 to invest it wisely in transformational projects. Last week, WECA made some adjustments to CRSTS, with Bristol getting a reduced amount. The forward plan for this committee, published on the 23rd of September, has a new agenda item for December called CRSTS Budget Reallocation to respond to this change and this challenge. Whilst this is in some ways disappointing for Bristol, it reflects the fact that our constituent unitary authorities are constructively working together for the good of the region as a whole, and our focus now has to be to continue on project delivery. The paper before us shows all the comprehensive work that our officers have been doing to ensure that all the individual contracts are managed well and moreover coordinated across the programme, both to ensure we deliver and to ensure we bring in significant additional capacity to manage the highway network throughout the programme so that any potential disruption is kept to a minimum. It's positive and telling that both heads of service have put their names to this paper, and it reflects the high level of internal collaboration between teams and disciplines to meet the unprecedented opportunity to transform the network and especially our public transport offer. I have every faith that we're gearing up to deliver well and to support our city to grow and to develop. Most of all, we need to prepare for our ongoing success as a city and all the extra journeys that a growing population will bring. We know there'll be some disruption as we deliver projects that the city needs, and we will need to work behind the scenes, back office to coordinate, and front of house to communicate with the public as we deliver this ambitious programme. So I'm pleased to announce, as part of this agenda item, our new website, Bristol on the Move. It's a one-stop shop to find out more about our 3 main transport corridor projects funded by CRSTS, including the city centre, the number 2 bus route, and the A4 Potway, how construction work could affect journeys, and how to access incentives like free bus vouchers and bike loans. The website will make it easier for people to understand what's happening and why, and access information while we're in the construction phases. A backdrop to all this is that the Combined Authority has been working hard with all constituent councils to improve its key relationships, governance and purpose as part of recovering from the best value notice last year. This makes it more important that we are giving Whitehall confidence in our ability to deliver and collaborate. As such, I look forward to constructive challenge on all our full business cases from the Combined Authority, but I ask that all feedback is timely and issued within the timescales and project milestones already agreed by their project assurance team. We cannot delay this work. I know that some of the Transport for City Regions fundings has already been committed to the CRSTS over-programming we collectively agreed through the Combined Authority, and I look forward to collaborating to allocate the remaining £611 million that's been allocated, not including match funding, to deliver an agreed transport vision that will be published soon. This level of funding is such an opportunity to continue our transport transformation. We simply must not allow parochial concerns or party politics to get in the way. Our residents and businesses deserve nothing less, but I do have one serious concern. When we delivered Greater Bristol Bus Network, the bus operators were part of the bid. When we delivered Metrobus, we ensured that we had a quality contract in place, which was as close to franchising as we could get at that time. Both have been highly successful projects, which shows that we can deliver impactfully. We have no such agreement in place for our current transformation plans. We need to get on with franchising our buses, therefore, as soon as possible. I know the other unitary authorities feel the same. The question is not whether, but how. Anyway, I now hand over to Adam and Duncan to introduce this paper. Thank you. Duncan, do you want to introduce yourself and then the paper?
Yes, thank you very much, Chair. So for those who haven't met me, I'm Duncan Venison, Network Operations Group Manager, basically responsible for the highway network. So the CRSTS programme will introduce significant changes to Bristol, as we just heard from the Chair, the likes of which that haven't been seen for many, many years. These changes will increase the sustainable travel in Bristol, making it easier to walk, cycle and travel by public transport, as well as improve the public realm for all to enjoy. The aim being to increase those who travel to, from and around Bristol sustainably. With several schemes being developed for completion in 2027, the next couple of years will see significant construction works in the central area, as well as some strategic corridors such as the A4 and A37. During the construction period, there may be reduced capacity on the network as lanes and routes are closed to allow the space required to construct the schemes. Possible increases in journey time should therefore be anticipated. During the construction, pedestrian routes will be maintained or they may be diverted. Cyclists will be accommodated either on existing routes or where it isn't possible will be accommodated in the carriageway. Bus routes will be maintained throughout the works with temporary provisions made where required for things such as bus stops. Mitigation measures will be put in place throughout the works period as detailed in the report to ensure those that have no option other than to use private car can make their journeys, whilst those that do use sustainable transport options continue to have reliable journeys. It's expected that modal shift required to ensure these schemes are successful will start to occur during the construction period. This modal shift must then continue to offset the increases in population growth in and around Bristol. These CRSTS schemes will change Bristol and ensure its transport network continue to meet the growth needs of sustainable transport.
Thanks, Duncan. You'll no doubt be glad that I'm not going to go through a 17-page presentation for you. There's a lot of slides attached to the paper that sets out our approach to how we're managing all of these different schemes and different work. Setting out our experience, how we utilise the operations centre, what we're doing with public transport, how we're then resourcing ourselves as well. So we've got a construction manager in place. We've also got some traffic management specialist company support who are drawing up traffic management plans in advance so we can see how they all coordinate. We've got extra highway network programming resource. We're doing a lot of engagement with contractors to understand how they would build the schemes. And then we've also done some analysis of how the schemes might interact with each other. So we set out how York Road has impacted the network and how that has been, how we've managed to localise that to the area around York Road. And then we've looked at the kind of main areas of work. So Park Street Triangle, Union Street, Bedminster and Redcliffe. We've done some analysis using TomTom data to show that actually the city centre is generally a destination. There is a through route element which is generally via Cabot Circus. So if you kind of think of it as a bit of a T, you've got stuff that goes to and from Cabot Circus and the M32. But generally, most of the other trips are coming in to locations in the city centre. So, for example, if you're driving in via Bedminster Bridges, you're very, very unlikely to be driving up to Park Street in the Triangle. So I think what our evidence demonstrates is that there isn't much linked impact between those two key areas. What we do, however, find is that there is quite a lot of traffic from each of those areas going to the Cabot Circus area. So what we're proposing to do is delay the Bond Street scheme, which is around Cabot Circus between the James Barton and the M32 until we are well advanced with the other schemes, because we can do with the changes to the spending rules. So as Councillor Plowden said, we still, the DFT's intent is that we still spend as much money as possible by March 27, which is what we're still pushing to do. The Bond Street scheme is a relatively small scheme, so we're looking to delay that until March 27, and then we have until, the paper says March 28, but they've actually agreed till March 29, so we have 2 full years following that once we're in contract to deliver the remainder of the scheme. So that's the kind of main mitigation we're doing to separate the impacts of the works, but obviously all the stuff we're doing in the background with the Bristol on the Move website, use of working with First Bus, working with the Combined Authority, and all the other things we've put in place are key to how we're going to manage the city centre through the period of delivering all these schemes.
Thanks. Tim, so I think we'd do question. I'm assuming that we've got questions for officers first, and then any comments people want to make for now. Is that right?
Yeah. The first thing I was going to say is Bristol on the Move looks excellent. I did call, I think, at a previous committee for us to be re-advertising the reasons why we're doing some of this, and I think this, this is a great way to do it. I was just going to ask, having done all this work to produce this, are we going to make sure that people get to know it's there and see it? What are we doing to sort of communicate on that?
Yeah, we're obviously running a comprehensive comms campaign, and we'll be highlighting it at every opportunity we can to direct people to that website. It is often difficult to get people to information that they really want at times. So that is a key element of what we're doing, is to engage with people and get them to visit the website and understand what's happening. And that will be reinforced throughout all the programmes.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you, Adam and Duncan, for presenting the report. So, Bristol on the Move is live now. We've been perusing it here for a couple of minutes now. I'm just going to ask about the granularity of the communications you're going to be putting out over it, because one of the issues that we found out with Muller Road Phase 1, which was quite a large scale project, was that residents thought that nothing was actually happening on the roadworks there for long periods of time. So can we make sure that there are status updates about each individual project published regularly, so that we don't have accusations of contractors not doing any work on the site for weeks on end that we had on Muller Road Phase 1, please?
It reminds me of a pledge right at the beginning of the Marvin Rees's tenure of no idle roadworks. So, yes.
I think one of the key points I would make, if you look at Victoria Street, for example, it's very evident all the work going on there on a continual basis. The way we are managing and awarding contracts, we've evolved that as well in terms of how we are challenging contractors to deliver at pace and to resource schemes appropriately, and then holding them to account on that basis. So that's a key factor of it. That said, there are always things like, if you put a concrete bus pad down, you've got to wait for a few weeks for the concrete to cure before you can do anything around it. So that can be confusing. But yeah, I think it's a very good point to keep regular updates on where schemes are and what they're doing. We'll certainly ensure that gets fed in.
You may have noticed on the Bath bridges that it actually has a big sign on both sides of the tent which says people working underneath the bridge, because it was very obvious that people were there in numbers every single day, but most recently they've been underneath, so we put big signs to make people aware of that. Emma's next.
Thank you. Yeah, echoing, just been looking at the website and it looks great. So a couple of things. Obviously, yeah, it's about sort of mitigating when those roadworks are taking place, and also modal shift. And I'm very, very cautious around modal shift as you go into winter, because it's sort of the time where it's the hardest to, people who are maybe thinking of moving away from private cars to bikes, or even to buses, when it's dark, when it's cold, especially if it's dark, and that also impacts maybe women as well. So I just wondered if you'd had any thought about how weather and sort of time of year is impacting this, and if that's had any influence on some of the sequencing.
So the majority of the kind of major impacting schemes currently are planned to start in sort of springtime.
Great.
So yeah, you'll get that opportunity to understand how the roadworks are going to impact people before you get to the winter period. Generally, bus use certainly is higher during the winter months than it is during the summer months, which is different to cycling and walking, which tends to be a little bit the other way around. Obviously, we'll be doing lots of this comms campaign in advance to get people thinking about what alternative options are available. I know from other schemes, they've made an assumption that a comms campaign like this can achieve something like a 15% reduction in car trips, depending on how you manage it. So the comms campaign is really key to ensuring that we get all of this to work well. Some of the schemes that we're proposing will deliver some of that behaviour change up front. So the Park Street Triangle scheme, for example, would provide a benefit to buses up front early on in the scheme, so that you get that improvement embedded immediately, so you can start getting the modal shift happening even while the scheme is being built. So there's lots of different things that play into it. Ultimately, there is going to be some congestion. It's going to take time for people to adjust their modes, but we'll be doing everything we can to assist people with adapting to the roadworks and how things are changing.
Great, thank you.
I've got Nick and then Kath.
Thanks. Two questions, one on the sort of the master plan and one on cycling. So Ed, did you just say there was soon to be an announcement of 600 million of agreed investment across the region? I thank you for letting us know that, but I'd like to have been part of the process.
This was announced by the Conservative government and then re-announced by the Labour government, so it's been around for some time, transforming city regions.
So we don't have
a programme yet. We'll be submitting with Combined Authority a very high-level outline programme at the end of this month, and then a more detailed programme, I think, later this year.
So is the programme a series of proposals?
Not at this stage, no. There aren't a list of proposals within the programme. So we've had a previous meeting with committee and councillors on TCR ambitions. We are looking at how. Yeah.
You were there, Nick.
Like that was an hour and a half phone call.
But
we didn't have a vote or any kind of decision at the end of it.
No, not a formal paper. We're nowhere near that stage as yet. We will then be looking to see how we can incorporate councillors' views further into the development of this high-level plan. We're working with the Combined Authority to understand when we're going to get to the stage of getting towards more detail. At the moment, it will be high-level pots of, as was in the announcement, mass transit, rail, bus services, etc.
Well, okay, so if you think that, if the administration believes that the engagement with councillors' box has been ticked, that was not what I was hoping.
No, and we are going to run another workshop, but WECA is in the lead with this. We're working with WECA, and the paper that went to the WECA committee last week identified how much of the over-programme from CRSTS is going to be carried into TCR. But that's about the limit of it, and WECA then delegated the authority to move forward TCR to officers, and we will absolutely be doing all we can to do that in as transparent and collaborative way as possible, both working upwards, sideways, and within Bristol.
So then, do we have a proper series of engagement sessions towards the movement plan, which is due to be voted on in February, but presumably needs to be co-designed with members of this committee before then? It's probably the sort of thing we should have a task and finish on, really.
We don't have a task and finish group on the movement plan, but I'm sure we'll be sending out plans to consult on it as we develop it.
Okay. All right. My second question is about access for cyclists during construction, as I think that was highlighted as something which is planned for and has been done in the past. I do observe that in Park Street, the work that we're doing right now, the highway has been maintained, the pavement has not been maintained, it's been moved into the cycle path. So the one mode which has been excluded is cycling, and also Victoria Street. That has made for a very unpleasant experience cycling to the station for me. There's an opportunity for a contraflow coming back, but there isn't. So what is the plan to maintain cycle facilities during these roadworks so that we don't go backwards while we're attempting to improve them?
We're certainly well aware of the road user hierarchy, and we'll certainly prioritise based on that. So making sure that pedestrians have very, very clear routes and safe routes is obviously the main priority for us. Carrying out these works, we are going to have to take up highway space, a lot of these sustainable schemes that we're putting in are going to provide additional measures for walking, cycling and also public transport. To build that, we're going to have to reduce the highway space there. Where possible, in my introduction, we will try and maintain as much as we possibly can of existing infrastructure. That may not be possible. Where we can't maintain infrastructure, then we'll make sure that on street there are clear signing. We've done this before for schemes such as Temple Circus, where we advise cyclists to either take up a central position in lanes, vehicles not to overtake, etc. We will do what we can to make sure that we can maintain cycle routes, but I cannot sit here and promise that we will be able to do that when we are taking up and reducing that size of the highway network to deliver the schemes for the ultimate benefit of cyclists in there.
I want to say, obviously, thank you for the paper. There's a lot going on in the city, and it's really encouraging to see the also thinking about how we can keep Bristol moving. So I welcome the new website. I haven't actually looked at it yet myself, but as Councillor Wilcox said, people are interested in these sort of things. When we looked at the roadworks going on the A4018, it still says this will take 2 years. If as councillors we're able to answer some of the questions that come to us, that'd be very useful. My only question was really a little detailed point on page 19 about the evidence base. You talk about 55% active travel, 25% public transport and 20% car use is required, and a university study. I'd be very keen to get a copy of that university study and to know where we are today with those numbers, where we are and where we want to get to. Don't have to answer that now. It's more of a question you can come back to me on.
So which slide was that on, sorry?
Page 19, evidence base and context. It talks about modal shift is essential.
Okay.
I think it's the study that was done a few years ago and informed the one city target. So there you go. We'll make sure we're taking action that officers will send you a copy of that report, Kaz. Does anyone else have any questions or comments? Tim?
Yeah, just very quick one. It's good to see that there's been a bit of leeway given to us in terms of the spending on CRSTS, because I know everybody raised that at several of our past meetings, so it's good to see there's a bit of movement there. Obviously, it's really good as well that we have a paper and we're clearly thinking about how we're going to make all this work together. The proof will be in the pudding, as we know. So, hopefully we'll get updates on a regular basis to say how it's going against how we thought it would go.
Yeah, I'm happy to bring regular updates, and we can point outside hopefully when it's all started being built to maybe take people of a tour when some of it's up and running as well. I think would be good.
And I'd like to see as much of that information as per David's request, that as much information as we can on how it's going and why people might think not enough is happening, put on our new website. Okay, last one, Rob.
It's a very quick point. It's just say thank you, because I think we'll get a lot of residents who obviously commute into the centre, use the city centre, who will need to understand the whole context. So that website is going to be invaluable when we're writing back to residents to say this is what's going on. So thank you for putting that together.
And I've been very keen that through the disruption, we're managing it well, which I think officers have demonstrated, but also that we have built in the outcomes we want to see. So the outcomes and the benefits we want to see is a certain amount of modal shift. Well, let's try and achieve that through the works. And I've particularly been glad to see the way we've managed the Bath bridges. And actually, the bus company have told us they've not seen any significant delays on either the A4 or the A37 going into Bristol, because the bus lane brilliantly goes all the way up to the point at which it's narrowed. And so we haven't seen that sort of delay. I apologise to some of the motorists who've seen some delay. We have to fix that bridge, but it's great to see that actually we're prioritising the road user hierarchy that Duncan mentioned. Thank you. So the recommendation is that we note this report, accept that we're entering into a period of works that may cause delays and congestion, and that we're doing everything we can to mitigate the impact. And also note that the The CRSTS schemes follow Bristol transport policy and the themes identified in the One City Transport Plan to promote and deliver sustainable transport to reduce the impact, which is positive, of city growth and city population growth. Right, let's move on again. We've got residence parking scheme expansion. The purpose of this report is to set out the case for expanding our residence parking schemes, and it outlines how the implementation of RPS can support BCC in better managing parking and prioritise more sustainable uses of the curbside, reduce private vehicle trips and enhance safety and environmental quality across all wards. A costed delivery plan underpins this report, providing the basis for drawing down funding from relevant funding streams. This is a key decision report, involves over £500,000 and impacts several wards. So, Adam, would you like to introduce and outline the report?
Sure. There's quite a lot of detail in the report that sets out the background to RPS, the elements that weren't delivered from the original plans to the north and the south, and then gives some of the policy context as well. We also refer back to the discussion we had at the previous committee where we talked about priorities for how we would prioritise new RPS schemes. One of the things I wanted to highlight under challenges is about reviewing the current operation of residence parking schemes. So we did an RPS review under the previous administration, and one of the things that was highlighted within that was the size of some of the residence parking scheme zones, whether they were too large, for example, or encouraging kind of cross-zone trips. We've also had quite a lot of representations from specific kind of work sectors saying, I really need a pass that enables me to go from RPS to RPS. That wasn't considered viable in the original RPS, so that is something else that we want to consider as well. So there will be a wider review of the existing RPS in that sense, looking at the RPS policy. And obviously there will be consultation on the RPS schemes. So generally the way it is, there's an informal consultation to say this is what we're proposing to do, and then there'll be a statutory consultation on the TRO. All of that said, we have the prioritisation criteria. I'll come to the finance bit in a minute, and we've used that to draw up a delivery plan. One thing to highlight, we have also included the parking charges on the Downs, which was a separate, I think, full council or committee decision. It was committee, yeah. In order to deal with some of the parking issues around the Downs, people parking there for long periods of time, etc., and also to encourage more sustainable usage of the Downs area. So we'll be looking at that as well in this context, and then also the impact that has on surrounding areas. So some of the priorities that we talked about previously were proximity to major trip generators. So things like Ashton Gate, the Downs also being a large trip generator. So having said all that, we've used that criteria and we've come up with a delivery plan. I'm going to skip the development stages initially just to set out when we'll be looking to do implementation. So implementation would start in 26-27, and we're looking at Ashton Gate RPS, starting the Downs and Henleys, Westbury, Luckwell, Parsons Street, Totterdown, that's implementation, yeah, and Windmill Hill. So those are all implementation in 26-27. Then in 27-28, the implementation schemes would be Ashley, so that's generally to the south in the first year, then which links in with SPLN. Then we have Ashley Down implementation in 27-28, along with Ashton Vale, Bishopston, finishing Downs and Henleys, Malago Vale, Perrott's Park, St Andrews, Upper Easton, and Totterdown East. So one thing to note there, we've swapped Upper Easton with St Werburgh. So the original RPS plan had St Werburgh's within it. There has been more demand for an RPS in Upper Easton, which is the area just to the east of Easton Way, which does suffer from a lot of problem parking. And then we have 4 slots, in essence, for scheme development. So we have 3 new RPS developments, which we will seek views from councillors as to what they should be, and then St Werburgh's, which has been moved from the earlier implementation phases into a later implementation phase. So just then covering the finances, we're asking for a total of 7.5 million or just over. Some of that comes from existing Section 106 allocations, some of it comes from CRSTS, And then the majority of it, just under 5 million, is coming from the clean air zone. The expectation being then that the pay and display and some of the permit income and the PCN income repays the cost of those schemes back into the CAS fund, so that money is then regenerated to be used again. So that the income from the schemes will be targeted to fill that hole in the first instance. So the recommendations then are to approve the undertaking of development of implementation work for those RPS areas as per the delivery plan, approving the spend of 7.5 million, including allocating 5 million of clean air zone money, and then authorising the exec director with the chair to award the project line procurement routes and to progress the scheme development alongside public consultation.
So I've got Tim, then David, then Don.
Yeah, thanks, Adam. Yeah, I think we have serious concerns about this paper, mainly around the fact that we're spending £5 million of CAS money on expanding these RPSs. In my opinion, there are better ways to help improve air quality, connectivity in the city and remove cars off the road. I think we could be spending that £5 million to provide a whole host of additional bus services or improved frequencies which would get people from outer parts of town into the centre, and then they wouldn't need to park in residential areas. You know, it really is about £5 million of CAS money. Is this the best way we could spend it? And in my opinion, it isn't. We were also told, of course, that livable neighbourhoods would mean we don't need RPSs anymore. And that was certainly what that, as a local councillor in 2020, when I asked about RPSs, we were told livable neighbourhoods are the way forward. Well, I don't want to put anybody in the hot seat, but by officers. So, you know, the fact that we're now being told that you have both in the same thing seems to be a bit of a contradiction there. I'll leave it at that.
So I'm just going to reply to that you may notice that South Bristol Livable Neighbourhood, the foundation stone is residence parking, because we believe that quite the opposite is that actually the foundation of a good livable neighbourhood is residence parking. And I think I'd also like to say it's very, very clear in that paper that all that money will be coming back into CAS. There's still headroom in CAS if...
Yeah, I do know, Ed, that the report says Finance have not seen the evidence to quantify the time frame for this replenishment, and I struggle to believe that our RPSs are going to make £5 million to pay back into that pot, certainly within any reasonable time frame that we could be spending it on other things. So that's our view.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you, Adam, for your report. I'd like to ask a clarification about the parking charges on the downs and when these might actually be implemented, because each of the yearly development delivery plans mentions something called the downs, and I'm wondering when it might actually happen, please.
So, as per discussions, I think initially at the curbside task and finish group, there is a need to link the downs parking charges to RPS changes around the downs, because obviously if you put parking charges on the downs, people might park in those surrounding streets. So we're looking at bringing forward those two together as a project. The aim is to get the downs parking charges in kind of in early 2027, but the expectation is it might be a bit later on in 2027. So we've got it over the 26, 27, 27, 28 financial years. Expectation being that it will be delivered in 2027. We're aiming to get it as early as possible. It depends on, I think, on how quickly we can move through the consultation and design development, because it becomes quite a big scheme when you incorporate the RPSs around it as well.
I think it's also worth mentioning that all of this is subject to consultation. Don.
Thanks. Yeah, one of the, and it's highlighted in the report, one of the well-established risks of RPZs is displacement. And I can certainly see some very, very already sensitive areas like around Southmead Hospital around the MEM, etc., where these are going to border on RPZs. They're our wards, of course. Interesting to look at the list of wards there, but this is £5 million of CAS money. CAS money is like gold dust because it's not ring fenced, so you can use it for all kinds of things, like buses, and you could use it as a bargaining chip with WECA, for instance, to improve our bus services and get cars off the road, not to use it as for car parking for the most privileged areas of the city. I wouldn't mind if I thought that the charges were going to be realistic, but you and I have differed on that in the past. I wanted them set at one level and you preferred them to be set at another level. I would prefer those charges to be set at a level where they brought in income for the Highways Authority from the people who can most afford to pay it, and that then that extra income went to fund our bus services rather than spending what we desperately need for next year. Okay, we may get it back, but we're not going to get it back for years. It's next April that we need the money for buses, and that's why I've enormous problems with this paper.
So next I've got Emma and Nick. Rob.
Thank you. So I just find it bizarre, you know, I mean, 8 years of Labour, they didn't put a single one in, and they're carrying this on, even though so many people have said that they want this. And not only that, when we did those inquiry days to the Liveable neighbourhoods, when you were the Cabinet Member for Transport, we were saying we've done this research and that that residence parking is a good precursor to all of those other traffic calming livable neighbourhood schemes. We're currently doing a curbside and parking strategy in a task and finish group. This has not been brought up that you don't want to spend the money on this. This is going to provide bike hangers, extra trees, parklets, whatever, electric car parking. We need to get parking controls in those areas before we can do all that stuff that I thought we all wanted, because they're going to improve those streets. You're helping develop that policy. And so I just find this backtracking very, very, very strange. As for the, the fact that it spreads out, absolutely, which is why those areas who are next to places where there has been a residence parking zone has suffered from that. I would love this to go quicker. It's a shame it's not, because I think some areas are going to struggle for a while. I'm very pleased to see that I think we've discussed that there will be more pay and display around high streets so that high streets don't suffer. But this is stopping areas being car parks. It's not making them car parks. They are already car parks because people park in them, they get the train, they get the bus, they get an e-scooter in, and they are using it as free car parking spaces. And I'm just astounded that you don't want to challenge that in any way.
That was directed
Nick,
at
would
me,
you mind
Chair.
if I let Don just say something?
Yeah, you absolutely do not have to have residence parking zones in order to implement all those good things. We've put trees in Avonmouth, and we've taken away parking spaces. We've not installed a parking zone. You can put in cycle hangers without a parking zone. You can put in pocket parks without a parking zone. Making a parking zone is giving space to cars. There's no link between that and all these other things that are happening in the East Bristol Liveable neighbourhood without a residence parking zone. All those good things are in there. This is something separate, and it's parking for people in the wealthier areas. I wouldn't mind that if they were charged properly, and I wouldn't mind that if it wasn't the money that should go to our bus services.
When the Transport Planning Society last came to Bristol, we had quite a lot of the board there, and I gave them a presentation about Bristol, and they said the cornerstone of all transport policy is being able to control parking in cities. So I think this is a really progressive measure. I'm going to move on to Nick.
Thanks, and I'll be a lot more positive about this paper than I often am. So,
I'd like to put it on the record that we haven't discussed this with Nick at all. No backroom deals. This is. I was asked by this committee not to talk about residents parking in the task and finish group. And that's what I've done. I brought this committee, and I'm sure Nick will agree to that we haven't discussed this offline or done any backroom deals or smoke-filled rooms or anything like that.
Correct. Although I am very welcome to engagement, as happens in a committee. But yeah, this I said at previous committees when we were talking about parking on the downs, if we were to charge for parking on the downs, which is something I'm still opposed to, then it's absolutely necessary to put in controls around the downs to prevent the kind of overflow. And I'm very glad that Adam and the officer teams have recognised that in putting this paper together. I still don't think that putting charges onto the downs right now is a good thing. We need to sort out our van dwelling policy, which is on the way, and we need a residence parking scheme. Glad to see that is also on the way, so if those deliver at the same time, then we will reduce the harm there. And then further, I think that there are benefits to controlled parking, and they pay for themselves. That's the whole point in legislation, that you're not stealing money from a bus budget. You are borrowing to pay for a revenue generator. They are self-funding. That's how residence parking schemes work. If we were to spend 50 million of capital all in one go, then it would be gone. That would be a problem for next year, whereas investing in a residence parking zone which pays for itself means you still have the money to spend on buses at the end of the process.
Rob.
Thank you, Chair. I'm really excited we're going to be able to deliver these schemes. You know, we've had 8 years of complete failure to address the problem from the previous Labour administration, which is pretty bad. You know, they didn't really listen to what people wanted. I mean, there's loads of wards in the city who wanted this, who the local councils actively were receiving emails and communications constantly to ask for these kind of schemes. So it's just wild to me that you think that it's a bad idea. Residence parking schemes, or managed parking areas, as I could more accurately call them. I'm probably losing that battle of naming it, but there you go. This is what they do. They discourage commuter parking in predominantly residential areas for no cost. It reduces car use and that overcapacity at the curbside. They help with excessive vehicle ownership and storage. That leads to more than is necessary, and therefore more use than is necessary, and thereby increased air pollution and carbon emissions. They help with that. They address the plight of pavement parking. Marked bays make people far less likely to pavement park when they know an area is being patrolled by CEOs, civil enforcement officers, what used to be called traffic wardens. Curbside electric vehicle charging becomes more of an option. They increase the likelihood of there being capacity for cross-pavement charging. And also they just feed into the curbside and parking strategy, which, you know, 2 of the Labour councillors present today have been very actively engaging in and provided really good feedback on how we want to do this. They give us more ability to shift out car parking spaces for other more sustainable uses, for bike hangers, scooter parking, parklets, sustainable urban drainage systems, all kinds of different things we can do if we have greater control over the curbside in a greater amount of Bristol. I do think it's important to focus on areas expanding outwards, as that's generally been the trend with these, or at least the trend up until 8 years ago. But we have already heard from a few other wards. I think it's interesting you're talking about deals, because, you know, we know that in Horfield, for instance, where there is our Labour councillors, that there is demand for that. You mentioned already the hospitals. You know, we know that that's a potential area that might need a new one. So there's, you know, three spots available. I would encourage the Labour councillors, if they want a parking scheme, to come to that area.
We weren't offered. You got them all.
Well, that's fine, but that's the point, isn't it? Is if you want them, there's 3 spaces available. So, you know, that's up to you whether you want to take them or not, and feed into that process. The 27 to 28 delivery plan doesn't have a full plan yet, so that is a great opportunity for the Labour group to feed those ideas in. The final thing, I just think that overspill that's been mentioned, you know, there's undoubtedly going to be overspill as a result of these schemes, not least in the one we've taken out and the one we've put in, if you see what I mean. The St Werburgh's to Upper Eastern change, there might be some overspill there. But that just means we need to keep expanding, honestly. I mean, I know that it's a strange thing for a Green to be talking about infinite growth, but in this case, at least the boundaries of Bristol, we do need to keep thinking about how we manage parking across all of our streets, not just the ones that happen to be in places, as you maybe correctly say, are in some of the wealthier areas. It's not just about that. It's also about places like Upper Eastern, which aren't particularly wealthy, or at least not not uniformly, and think about how those people have to deal with parking issues as well, because it's not just the wealthy people who do have to deal with this.
Kaz, then Tim. Can we make it quick? Because I think we've all been... Yeah.
So I'll try and be as quick as I can. I echo the comments made about the £5 million. We heard this evening about in public forum about concerns about funding of buses going forward. So putting buses on is a bit more carrot and a bit less stick. In terms of the Downs and Henleys, I thought at one time that was going to come to the curbside and parking strategy, and then that seemed to disappear. And the Downs Committee, we know, are running a deficit. They're not going to get any money from potentially from this parking that we're going to charge on the Downs. So I'm concerned about the Downs and the way this is going to extend in Westbury and Henleys, perhaps even to Southmead, one of the most deprived wards in the city. I live in Henleys. I can't remember any consultation from Lib Dem councillors in terms of whether I want a parking scheme in my area. And in terms of the
we're paying for it.
Yeah, and the curbside and parking strategy, yes, I am part of that, but we've had some stakeholder feedback. I would have wanted to have seen a proper strategy. If you look at Cardiff, for example, they've got an announcement recently about a strategy to charge for heavy vehicles and polluting vehicles. And they've got a lovely document on a residence parking scheme, but I'm really concerned that what's happening here is we're just extending this scheme out across the entire city until we've got the ultimate thing that some green councillors want, which is traffic to move to the countryside or to evaporate altogether.
I think there's very good evidence that, combined with the Greater Bristol bus network, residence parking schemes made for a massive expansion in bus usage in around about 2012 to 2015 to 2017. So much so that First Bus were able to reduce the fare for me to get into town, for example, which is 2 miles, from £2.85 to £1.50. That came on the back of the growth in patronage because of residence parking. For me, that is something that is sustainable and will drive people onto the buses in a good way, rather than putting all the money into supporting bus services forever and a day using our public funds. So that's one of the reasons why I brought this paper here. And I'd also like to say that I did specifically go to it's been a long day, Task and Finish group for parking and curbside strategy, and we all agreed that we would bring a paper. We wouldn't talk about residence parking at that Task and Finish group. We would bring a paper here. That's what we've done. I am going to just be clear that this is to approve the undertaking of development and implementation work for RPS, to commit money to it both from various sources, as Adam outlined, and to put in delegations to put that in place. I move the report. Would anyone like to second this? Take your pick. Rob, go on then. Who would like to vote in favour of this piece? So that is Rob, David, Emma, Nick and me. Who is against? We've got Kaz, Don, Tim and Jonathan. So that's carried. Let's move on. So we've got Kaz exemption and financial support package. This is to seek approval of a time-limited exemption package for eligible residents with clean air zone non-compliant vehicles impacted by the introduction of a bus lane and bus gate on Queen's Road, as proposed, as described in this report. It's a key decision report. It does relate to a decision affecting 2 or more wards. And Adam, would you like to just cut to the chase and introduce this report?
Yep, sure. So this is about mitigating the impact of the bus gates, in essence. To access Park Street, without going through the bus gates, you would need to go via St George's Road, which is within the CAS. So this paper is about a number of properties at the top end of Park Street, which will be impacted by that and then required to go into the CAS. So the proposal is to enable them an exemption to the bus gates, in essence. So an ability to go through the bus gate to access their properties rather than having to go through the CAS. They would be initially time limited as far as practicable, and then that would be reviewed in future. Obviously, the CAS won't be there forever. That's one thing to consider. The CAS itself has been in operation for quite some time, and it's now at the point where 9 out of 10 journeys in the CAS are compliant, so that the levels of compliant vehicles have gone up significantly. The following groups of citizens will be eligible, so residents, visitors to those residential properties that are known to the resident, vehicles belonging to businesses operating from properties within the area defined in Figure 1, so operational vehicles in essence, informal carers and professional carers. Other groups that will be eligible, that will be impacted but won't be eligible are business owners, employees, customers, delivery drivers, tradespeople, visitors to St George's Hall, the Georgian House Museum, Brandon Hill Park, and blue badge holders. However, I think it's important to note that there will be alternative options for blue badge holders. So obviously people can pay the daily CAS fee. They can park outside of the CAS. So you've got West End Car Park, which is 500 metres away. You've got disabled parking bays proposed on Triangle South as well, which is part of the Park Street scheme. And also there is the financial assistance, financial support process, which is currently set at £30,000 and is under review to keep in place with inflation. So that enables people that are eligible to seek financial support to upgrade their vehicle, and all blue badge holders are always included in that, so are able to seek that financial support. So that's kind of one of the main elements. I think it's also worth noting that obviously those properties are right on the edge of the CAS at the moment, so will have already been making decisions about whether to upgrade their vehicle being that close to the CAS. And in terms of kind of exemptions and such like, we need to ensure that what we're doing is the same across the whole of the clean air zone. So there were a number of other options considered, not doing anything which we felt wouldn't be reasonable, so we wanted to bring forward some exemptions to mitigate this impact. Temporary time-limited bus lane and bus gate exemptions for compliant and non-compliant CAS, a business CPZ, a CAS exemption, bus lane and bus gate removal, relocation and delay implementation. All of those, the reasons for rejecting those are set out in the paper. So the recommendation is to approve the preferred option of offering a time-limited exemption 1 year from the date of opening of the bus lane and bus gates, and financial support packages for those eligible citizens with non-compliant vehicles who are impacted by the introduction of the bus lane and bus gate at the northern end of Park Street.
Just reminding ourselves that it's still proposed and not yet a done deal, and still certain hoops and...
Yeah, this is all should the Park Street triangle scheme be implemented.
David.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you, Adam, for your report. The report suggests that there is financial support available for people to upgrade their vehicles. The council website's page about Clean Air Zone financial support talks about a package of £42 million. I'm assuming that figure needs to be updated, well, needs to show how much has actually been spent, so that we can have an idea about what is left in that financial package. I think that would be useful, please.
So there is, based on our analysis, sufficient funding left within that pot to provide vehicle upgrades. There is essentially more than enough funding within there, based on the number of people that apply for the financial support. So we are in discussion about how that funding is used, and there will be an update on that coming through. But yeah, there is definitely sufficient funding to enable all the vehicle upgrades.
So has the financial support closed for the rest of the Clean Air Zone, or can people still apply?
It's still open, and I say we're in discussions about how that can be used going forwards as well.
I think that would be something positive to do. Thank you.
Yeah, thanks, Adam. Can you explain how the mechanics of people who are exempted, how that will work?
So they would have an exemption to the bus gate at the top end of Park Street. So the way they can access their properties at the moment without going through the clean air zone is only via the top end of Park Street. So there would be a exemption to the bus gate. So that number of vehicles would go on like a grey list in terms of the bus lane enforcement cameras. So if they drive through there, they wouldn't be issued with a ticket. Once in, they can exit northbound because there isn't a bus gate proposed northbound to exit Park Street. If they want to go southbound or come from the south, they have to go through the CAS anyway. So they would be paying the CAS charge either way.
So the technology will identify them as somebody living in that area, and as a result, it won't issue them with a ticket.
Yeah.
So that's technology that we do have available, which could be applied to other bus gates.
It already is, because we've given exemptions to blue badge holders and other exemptions in East Bristol which weren't in place before, weren't in place under the previous administration.
So that was a question. I've got a comment. Do you want me to make that now as well? Yeah, a bit of a concern on this, that this wasn't raised at the time that we debated the Park Street scheme, because it could have, it is a factor that maybe people might have needed to take into account when they were deciding on that scheme. So a bit of a disappointment that didn't happen at the time. As you know, we abstained on the scheme at the time.
I think that's a fair comment. I think it's also fair to say that this was particularly us responding to residents' concerns, as we hope to for both South Bristol and East Bristol Liveable Neighbourhood. Residents came to us. We realised there was an anomaly, and so we're trying to do something about it. So this is specifically us listening to the concerns of residents based on the proposals that were voted through on this committee.
And I appreciate you say it's probably only 1 in 10 vehicles now that's not that is not compliant with the CAS, but I do still have a worry, particularly in terms of disabled people visiting Park Street, who can now only access it through the CAS, and some of them will have old vehicles that they haven't been able to replace. Getting out to places like St George's, you said about parking outside, and then mentioned 500 metres. Well, that is a long distance for somebody who's disabled to travel. So I would particularly like us to look at whether there's any way of offering exemptions towards, blue badge holders or something that we can do for those people.
So on our forward plan, we've got busgate exemption policy coming, and that's probably the time when we have that discussion, and that will be before these bus gates go in. Shall I move it? I move that we approve the approach to future delivery. No, sorry, wrong. Approve the preferred option of offering a time-limited exemption 1 year from date with a review, and at that point, and financial support package for eligible citizens and non-compliant vehicles. Who would like to second that? David. So can I have a in favour? That's Jonathan. I'm not going to read everyone. Can you see that? Do you want me to read everyone's? No. Rob, David, Emma and Ed against. And abstaining. That's Nick, Kaz, Don and Tim. Let's move on. Agenda item 10, cycle hanger policy. This is to seek approval to enact a target policy outlined further in the policy paper for the delivery of new cycle hangers up to 2030 and adopt the proposed position. I think it's worth saying that quite a lot of the target is not funded, but what we want to do is make sure we've got a good policy in place, like we did with residents parking last time, to make sure that we can when funding is available, that we can get on and deliver it according to the priorities set out in here. So I don't know if you want to.
Yeah, so the aim of the paper is to seek approval for the policy, which will seek to deliver at least 400 additional cycle hangers by 2030. So we've got 102 existing cycle hangers. Priority will be delivery for social housing in areas experiencing higher deprivation, especially neighboured areas with high household occupancy of terraced, flat, shared, converted or commercial property types. That's the kind of policy for how many. As Councillor Plowden says, there is some funding already secured through the latest Active Travel Fund. We expect there to be further funding coming forward, so we're seeking approval to spend up to £4 million on delivery of those 400 cycle hangers, and that's in essence what the report is asking for. And there's a huge amount more to say on it.
Yeah, so when I saw this paper, my first reaction was that £4 million was a lot of money to be spending up to 2030, but I looked at it in more detail when we look at what we spend on footways and carriageways just in 1 year, 1.3 million on footways, 6.2 million on carriageways. So I became a bit more warm to it at that point. But we need good highways to encourage people to cycle as well. So we need to sort of be fitting in potholes and stuff like this. So it's not just about cycle storage, but also cycling infrastructure. The one thing I did want to pick up on was the 7% gap between the most deprived decile and the city average for people cycling once a week, and the high deprivation you mentioned. And I think the issue was the sort of geographical distribution. Now, I understand that's maybe coming from houses of multiple occupation and stuff like that. It was very sort of concentrated on the sort of central part. So I'm just wondering, because I was at a place in Southville just a couple of weeks back, a block of flats, 3-storey flats, where some of the cycles was being stored in the corridors. I just wonder if maybe we can look at the whole city for more cycle storage as well. But I appreciate, obviously, the main issue is the typical terraces with the people with the cycles in the hallways. That's the only point I wanted to make.
Yeah, and certainly we'll include that. Obviously, we do want people to come forward with suggestions for where they want cycle hangers. I think we've cited that there's 500 locations suggested so far, so this would enable us to deliver all those locations. But yeah, also we need to be going out and practically installing them in places where people are going to need them. There is, different types of housing across the city, and that tends to lead to more demand in certain areas. So one of the other authorities in the area handed some money back because they didn't have enough demand, because the way their housing is, it didn't generate that demand. So yeah, there are some complexities to it.
Thanks. I'm in favour of installing cycle hangers. I remember when I lived in my slightly smaller terraced house applying for a cycle hanger and obviously not getting it because we weren't installing any back then. Now I'm in a slightly larger terrace house and I leave them in the shared hallway. But what I'm asking is about how our priority list has been worked out. Obviously, we want people to start cycling who are currently driving and where the barrier is they don't have anywhere to store the bike because of the arrangement of their house. So that suggests that areas with high household occupancy of terraced, flat, shared, converted and commercial property types, that's the most important. So why is social housing prioritised above that?
So I think social housing is often designed without that storage space, and as someone else mentioned, there is a fairly significant difference between cycling rates in the lowest deciles and the highest deciles, and I think safe cycle storage has a part to play in that. So it's not just saying we're just going to do it in social housing, but we need to be aware that those are areas that need cycle hangers as well, where like a lot of the newer housing and newer flats will have cycle stores built in because we insist on them through planning. That's often not the case in some of the older blocks and particularly in some of the social housing blocks.
So you're saying that social housing isn't a uniform block, that there are some places which maybe are terraced, flats, shared, converted or commercial property types that would need it. So that suggests that the decider is not the tenure of the house, it is the nature of the dwelling. So why put tenure ahead of the type of dwelling?
So I think the policy is talking about the type of dwelling as certain types of dwellings don't have good cycle storage ability. And it's identified that social housing is one of those types of dwellings, and that there is a deficit in Okay, I appreciate that. We're talking about like blocks of flats where we've installed them previously, and they've been very well received in terms of providing that safe cycle storage for people. And it's not all about getting people to get out of cars and cycle. It's giving people access to more modes of getting around, because we know a lot of the more deprived people in the city don't have access to a car. If they don't have access to a bike, that gives them even fewer options. So, it's not just getting people out of a car, it's giving people that wider accessibility to transport options.
You might want to think about an amendment to this, but if that's what you're concerned by, you may want to propose change to that. Who's next? Rob?
I'm interested. I think you made a good point. But what I was going to ask, two different things. I'm a big supporter of this, and I'll vote for it. And I'm not a sceptic of the policy. I'm a sceptic of just this policy, because it is really important, obviously, that people have access to secure storage near their homes. But I'm also concerned that we might not be putting so much into on-street and cycle stands at places where people go. I mean, my experience is it's just very frustrating in certain places around Bristol, to where you get high streets even sometimes, places where you think people are going to come on their bike and they haven't necessarily got somewhere to lock. So it's both sort of homes and addresses that need it there close to them, and that's why the cycle hanger policy is great. But I also think we need to just do something about that. The second thing is just eventually it feels right to me that this is something that's paid for at the moment, isn't it, the cycle hangers? So you have to pay a fee to do this. It feels to me, if we're trying to encourage people, particularly thinking about those places you were talking about where people perhaps are on lower incomes, it would make sense eventually to have the aim of making it so that they don't have to pay for use of the cycle hangers. I understand that's not probably feasible now, but I think it should be kept in mind. So those are the 2 points I'd make. But yeah, I'm interested to hear about, in terms of how we are thinking about public bike stands as well as the cycle hangers.
So obviously when we do schemes, we put in significant bike parking as part of that. We don't tend to get big slugs of money from the government to say put in Sheffield stands. I was speaking to the team about this, and there are certain companies developing like cycle stores that you can use in city centres, where you use your card or your phone, etc., to access them and pay for it. So that's something else that we're looking at as a slightly different thing, rather than a kind of council promoted thing. It's how can we bring that sort of option forward for somewhere like Broadmead, so you have that safe cycle facility. So yeah, that is a gap that we are looking at alongside of this policy, and as I say, throughout our schemes we will put cycle storage in.
Just for the record, Glasgow are doing a thing now where there's public access to cycle hangers, and so I've asked the team to look into that. I've also asked the team to look into, if we are doing all the sort of surveys and everything, to put in a cycle hanger, whether or not we could put in a couple of Sheffield stands next to that. So that's something I'd like the team just to have a look at, is making sure that we've got those Sheffield stands right next to the hangers. I've got lots of hands going up, so I've got David next, and then, is it David next? Then Tim, then Don, then Emma, then Jonathan. Oh, okay, all right. Well, why don't we go Don, Emma, Jonathan, and was there anyone else?
Thank you. So when we had the previous rollout, Adam will remember that it wasn't our strategy, but there wasn't much of a strategy. It was loudest voice, and we know where how the spread of those cycle hangers went as a result of those who are most computer literate and those who've got the most expensive bikes obviously being the first to demand the hangers. So very much support the approach which we trialled and has worked, of getting those in or near our tower blocks where cycles are, and those of us who go in and out regularly find them in blocking fire escapes, tied to doors and things, and all kinds of things going on. Because, as Adam said, for some people their bike is an absolute necessity. It's all the transport they've got. but they seriously don't have anywhere to store it that is safe. So they have to, we're telling them don't put it in the fire escape, and they're saying I have to put it in the fire escape. So I think there isn't much granularity in this paper. What slightly concerns me is with the rollout of RPZs, the first response is going to be, well, we need to see what spaces, get the cycle hangers in there before we rent out all the rest of the space, because we're going to lose most of it then. What I'm saying is, if you want to do that, that's fine. It's your street space in your wards. I can think of much nicer things to do, much more aspirational things to do. But don't leave our social housing out and while you sort out your problems of your car parking down there, because it's really essential for many people.
One of the other things I've asked the team to do is make sure that residents' parking zones are much more, the TROs are more flexible. So if we do want to put in, take out one space for a tree or another space for a cycle hanger, then that's possible without necessarily changing the entire TRO. And I think that's something with digital TROs is more easy to do. That's a recurring theme, isn't it, Tom? Emma.
I was actually going to talk about charging. So, in terms of sort of funding and putting funding back into this, I absolutely agree that those areas, certainly where people don't have access to a car, and active travel is their travel. It's like, it's not modal shift, it's how they get around. It needs to take priority, absolutely. I also know that there's areas where geographically, which may be more affluent, but because of the geography, those places go like hotcakes. You say, oh, the cycle hanger, the spaces can be booked from 8 a.m. and by 8:30 they've all been snapped up. So I don't see why we wouldn't charge for those, because, as you say, we're going to, if people are willing to pay it, is there a way then that money can be then reinvested to allow more cycle hangers for social housing?
So currently the fee that people pays for the maintenance of the cycle hanger, so it doesn't generate any income to the council. You could look at setting aside income from somewhere else to fund it. So, we talked about RPSs earlier. In the future, if you had spare RPS money, you could say that's going to pay for the cycle hangers. There's lots of different ways you can do these things. It's all decisions about where money is being spent. I think if you look at some of the current cycle hanger locations where they're not in an RPS, people have got a free parking space for their car, but they have to pay to park their bike on the highway. So there's lots of things to consider when you're thinking about what to charge for and what not to charge for. That's something for councillors, for committee to consider in future, I think, and decide on what you'd want to do in regard to that.
And I think I'm right in saying the price has actually come down, hasn't it? From when we first put them in 8-10 years ago, it's now about 60% cheaper.
Yeah, and the places go very quickly. It's very, they are very popular. It shows there is a huge demand for them. So, we'll be looking to roll them out as quickly as we can. It can be challenging with finding an appropriate space and that sort of thing. But I also agree with Councillor Alexander. We do need to make sure that they are put in places where people aren't always shouting for them as well, because we need to have equity on it as well.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you.
Jonathan, last word.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. Thanks for the paper. So you're proposing a city-wide approach rather than sort of limited local rollouts. Has the work been done on this and you've identified the criteria, as to which areas would qualify. But have you actually done the detailed work which identifies where in the city these will go, or is that something which will happen further down the line if this gets approved?
So there's been a load of evidence brought together about where the need is in terms of people's requirements and where they've asked for them, and also where the types of property are that would seem most in need of cycle hangers. As I say, we have 500 requests for locations at the moment, and that will obviously be a key part in determining where we put cycle hangers. But there will be more targeted looking at areas where we think they need to be put in place as well.
I'm going to move this to a vote. So the recommendation is we approve the approach to future delivery and the 2030 installation target, and we authorise all the normal delegations, which I'm not going to read out in full. Would anyone like to second this? Emma. And if you're in favour, show your hands now. Carried unanimously. Hooray. Yes. Right. Centreline policy. So this is to seek approval from the committee on a policy position that where we do not reinstate centre lines by default following resurfacing. So road safety benefits can be realised by the maintenance programme. So I think it's a great thing to do. And only reinstated where determined essential by the road safety team. And then there's a safeguarding process to make sure that if we have a bit of regret, then we've got the chance to put it back later. And I think it's really good to have a situation where we're not always putting back like for like after maintenance. I'd like to ask Mark Spaducci, the Group Manager for Road Safety, to introduce and outline the report, and also to say thank you for waiting so patiently through such a long committee meeting. And take it away, Mark.
Thanks, Chair. And actually, I've been involved in many of the things that have come through, so it's just been nice to watch it anyway. I'm not Sean, but this was a joint paper between myself and, from a road safety perspective, and the highways maintenance team, because this is about how we can embed some road safety benefits through the maintenance programs that Phil next to me sort of works on as well. It's something that we've done over the years, and this paper is really just about putting it down in writing as to this is how we are going to do it, so that it's clear for everybody when we're doing it, why we're doing it, and the steps that we're going to go through to try to make sure that we only put them back in where we deem them necessary from a road safety perspective. That will hopefully deliver the benefits that we've seen from some of the research that's been done nationally and more locally, through hopefully reducing the speed of traffic and also drivers giving more space to cyclists as they overtake. There are going to be occasions where we need to keep centre lines in place, and we'll have to make sure that that's sort of done on an exception basis, but based on our road safety experience of people in my team. And like you said, there's one of the complaints, not complaints really, but one of the issues that we've had in the past was where we've done this, people have then come back through, or directly or through their councillors saying, why is this centre line gone? It's made things less safe. That we've now built into this new process a way that we can together can look at that and see if there's a way that we can review and reinstate the centre lines where we feel it's needed. So it's really just putting that down is a very clear way forward. That's what the recommendation is there, and nothing. The process is in the appendix, which hopefully sets out exactly those steps that both of us will work to.
Thank you, Mark. David.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you, Mark, for your report. It's really useful, and I think it's an excellent thing that we can actually do to improve road safety. One small wrinkle I would suggest that we actually inform ward councillors that we're removing the centre line from individual roads that already have a sensible speed limit, because I think that'd be something important to do to actually make sure that ward councillors are fully up to date on the process.
I just checked with Phil as to how many roads would likely to be in the list each year, and we were talking about 150 to 200. So yes, we can have a look at that. Clearly, how we can do that might be a bit more of a challenge, but that's why we've wanted the policy in place, so that's there, if so you can see why we're doing it, even if we're not able to do that very cleanly. Hope that helps.
Do we kind of need a policy? Because in my one meeting with you, you come across me as somebody who's very much an expert on this, and somebody who'd be able to make decisions without even needing a policy. So perhaps we can just let the officers get on with their job. And my concern really is the research that has been mentioned here seems a little bit flaky. It talks about the University of West of England research, which refers to an A road in a Hampshire village. And it does actually say the search for studies using a robust research criteria largely concluded that there is a deficit of such studies in the international English language peer-reviewed literature. So I'm concerned about the lack of robust research on this one, and I'm a bit reluctant for Bristol to be a kind of guinea pig. Also concerned about learner drivers, elderly drivers who might need centre lines. And I know Don didn't want me to mention autonomous vehicles, but as I'm on the Public Safety and Protection Committee, where we have discussed those, it may well be that they need centre lines as well. So, I've got concerns about this particular item.
I can try and answer a little bit of that, really. This approach was something that we've been doing from a technical perspective for quite some time. And and that's been supported by that work that we've done then and others that have been working on it 10 years ago with us. What I can say is that we haven't had any evidence one way or the other to say whether or not those roads that we removed centre lines in the past have generated any other safety concerns because of the approach that we've taken to try and make sure that we've only done it where we feel there's a road safety benefit. So there's only been 1 or 2 roads that have been raised over the years where residents have come back via their councillors and said we're concerned about these. Even then, it wasn't supported by any evidence of any collisions happening. It was really just their fear of things happening. So I think I have confidence that this is something that we can do. I live in a street where there's no centre lines. It's just how many residential roads are built. So we're not talking about taking out or not reinstating centre lines on major routes. It is those roads where we really feel that that's a sensible approach. A lot of the time the centre lines are down the middle of the road, parking on both sides. It serves no purpose, really. But we will take a view on each one to see whether or not we feel on the balance of risk that it's best to leave it in part, not reinstate it. So hopefully that will cover those sorts of issues.
Yeah, I think just to echo what Kaz says, I'm a bit concerned that we as a council would be making policy on such thin evidence. But also it does seem that we're pursuing a strategy whereby we will review every single one that we do and make a decision on whether or not to do this. So it seems a bit odd that we need a policy to say the default is one or the other, because we'll make a decision on each one based on what we think the right thing to do is. The other thing I have a bit of a concern about is how residents will view this. We have an awful lot of road markings in our city that are not up to scratch at the moment, need repainting, and I think people will just see this as us trying to cut corners. I appreciate that is not what this is about, and the finances, are negligible, but I think it could be perceived by people to be that.
I just want to say that we recognise that the road markings are in not a good state. That's a legacy that we've inherited, and we are, I think we've got now 4, we're organising for 4 crews to be out there, 2 proactively going and doing an area, and 2 responding to concerns from councillors and prioritising things like some of the double yellow lines, which are safety features, and particularly zebras, which I've had a discussion with Sean and the team, and I feel, and we're going to be, zebras will be one of our focuses. So this is not about not renewing paint, quite the reverse, but it's about trying to improve road safety and encourage drivers to manage their risk more appropriately. There's a lot of evidence that shows that drivers, if they know that they're within the line and the oncoming vehicles in the line, won't do anything to compensate for risk. Whereas if it's not so clear, there's a thing called risk compensation. They'll slow down, and there is papers from Transport for London and other places that show that this works.
Yeah, I think our worry here is the fact that the evidence that's presented in this report even that says we don't feel there's enough evidence to make a decision on this. So we're making policy based on very thin evidence in here. If there is other evidence, perhaps it should have been in the report as well.
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, I'm concerned about the robustness of the evidence. It from a road safety perspective, it does feel counterintuitive. And speaking as a driver with 43 years experience, I know that I feel safer when I'm on a road which has white lines down the middle. So I'm struggling to support this.
Which is exactly the point, that if drivers are feeling safe, they're likely to take more risks, which put vulnerable people like cyclists and pedestrians more at risk. That's exactly the point of this, Jonathan. Dave.
Thank you, Chair. I'd like to confirm that as part of any white line reinstatement process, that roundels specifying the speed limits such as 20 and 30 and also cycle markings will be reinstated, please.
It's certainly not the intention to not reinstate them. Yeah, so absolutely plan to put them back in. I suppose one thing we'll have to look at through that task and finish group if there's other opportunities for that as well.
Thank you.
Thank you. I'm going to admit, I had not heard about this, and I did have a little look at it, and my initial thought was, that's crazy. And then I looked at it, and it does make a lot of sense. And I think also because these days you get such a variable in the size of cars as well. You know, often these roads were demarked when all cars were pretty much that size, and now they're all over the place. So they don't, and also in Bristol with the parked cars down either side, it's much better that drivers keep their wits about them and negotiate those meeting situations and cyclists and don't rely on those road markings. So it does make sense. However, I've not done a deep dive. It sounds like other people haven't done a deep dive either. So I would suggest either maybe a members briefing to brief members, all members on this, because as you say, going ward to ward, all the different roads that this might affect. So that could be a way to, you know, just explain it a bit more, maybe if there's any research we can look at, and or the road safety task and finish group, because I think that's the place where we could really sort of have a look at this and maybe add that into our policy, because to me it does make sense, but I understand, you know, we always say we want to be evidence-based, and if people haven't got the evidence yet, I think it would be good to just flesh that out. Does that make sense?
Would you like to defer this decision?
I would like to defer this decision. But I am interested, but I just want people to, I think other people will be interested if they learn more. Maybe we just haven't learned more about this.
Nick.
Thank you. I would not like us to defer this decision. I think we've had the debate and we have an expert recommendation from officers. We don't always ask our officers to provide peer-reviewed papers. The fact that we have had 2 of them provided to us doesn't undermine the credibility of our road safety officer saying that this will make roads safer. This is what we accept on every single other paper. This time we have been given more evidence than normal.
Thank you, Nick. Last word to Rob, and then I'm going to move a vote.
Yeah, I am convinced by the evidence because I've read it and I think it seems like it makes sense. I also think that thing of mentioned by Jonathan is exactly the point, is like we can't continue to prioritise like the safety, well not the safety, the perceived safety of people who drive over the safety of people who are much more vulnerable road users, and if this does some small amount to influence that, then we should vote for it.
I'm going to move this, so I'm going to recommend that this committee approves the policy of the default position of not reinstating centre road markings post-resurfacing programmes on residential streets, and approves the safeguarding process set out in Appendix A. Would anyone like to second that? I'll give it to David this time. And who votes for this? So that's Rob, David, Emma, Ed and Nick. Against? All the others. Kaz, Don, Tim and Jonathan. Thank you. Let's move on. Vehicle towing contract. This is to seek approval to re-procure the highways maintenance vehicle towing contract, essential to make sure that we can do our maintenance works. And to re-procure the contract for a longer period of time so that we can encourage contractors to invest in more modern fleet and equipment so they can become CAS compliant. This is a key decision report because it relates to a decision involving over £500,000. Phil, I can't thank you enough for staying so patiently and so long. Would you like to say anything to introduce and outline the report?
Hello, everyone. I think it's pretty straightforward, really. It's just re-procurement of an existing contract. Historically, we've re-procured it on a 2-year basis. We'd like to go for a longer period this time because we seem to be constantly re-procuring it, but also a longer contract may, as you've already said, contractors may invest into newer vehicles. A lot of running vehicles that aren't even Euro 6 are not CAS compliant. So that longer contract, more value to it, may get them to kind of invest in that. I don't think there's a lot more to say, really.
That's mercifully brief. Thank you. Anyone want to say anything? Tim, then David.
Well, I feel I have to say something because Phil's been here for so long. It'd be rude not to ask you. So just to clarify, this is a contract for moving cars away from an area of road that's going to be resurfaced or something like that. It's not about towing away cars that are on double yellow lines. Is that right?
That's it. So it's purely to facilitate sort of maintenance works that we're doing. Other teams do use it. Parks use it, and so it is used by a lot of other teams.
Okay, but it's not traffic enforcement.
It's not.
And I think I mentioned this at the agenda briefing, but something that's been raised with me, but it seems almost no other councillors had this raised, but I have had it raised that people have had their vehicles moved and then not known where they've been moved to. So if we're recontracting this, can we just make sure we put something in the contract to make sure that the communication is robust with people in those streets, that they know where to go and look if they turn up and their car has disappeared?
Yeah, so if you think that, so this contracts kind of facilitate other works. So for instance, the road resurfacing contractor would be required to notify residents by letter as to the works going on. They will put signage up and that, and cones go out, so residents will be aware that their vehicles will be towed. The towing contractor themselves, when they do tow a vehicle, they do email us, the team. They email BCC Customer Services, BCC Parking Services, and they do also notify the police, so that if people kind of turn up and can't find their car, they've got various points of contact to kind of call and hopefully locate it.
Okay, that's great. Thanks.
I think it's also worth saying that anyone who's got an identifiable blue badge, they put the car back where they found it?
Yeah, so anyone with a blue badge, we'd move the car, we'd carry out the works, and then we would put that vehicle back.
Thank you, Chair. And thank you, Phil, for your report. I'm going to ask a dumb question here. Why can't we simply use the same contract that we use to clear bus lanes and off double yellow lines to do this? Why do we need a separate contract?
So we've checked this out with kind of legal and procurement teams. The one that Parking Services use, so that's it's what they call a concession contract. So there, the fines that people kind of get hit with for parking in sort of on double yellows, that type of thing, covered cost of towing. Ours is a service delivery contract where we bear the cost, and so that comes from operational budgets. I'm not a procurement expert, but apparently we cannot mix the two. We have checked with both procurement
You certainly
and legal
sound like
teams.
a procurement expert. Thank you very much for your answer.
I'm not.
So, shall we authorise the Executive Director of Growth and Regeneration to re-procure and award the vehicle towing contract and invoke any subsequent extensions or variations delegated? So, who would like to second that? Thank you, Kaz. And who's going to vote for this? Carried unanimously. Right, let's move on. Now, councillors, colleagues, we are moving on. We have 2 agenda items now for information only. So I'm very keen to keep going and hear these, and I'm assuming that everyone else is, but I just wanted to make the point that both of these are for information, and we've been here for quite a long time already. We have extended the booking for this room, so security services aren't going to be wandering around in their pyjamas and asking us to leave. And so should we carry on? This next one is to update the committee on progress on the workplace parking levy outline business case and progress on key project milestones.
Chair,
Adam,
sorry,
yes.
could I, perhaps we could assume that everybody's read the paper?
Yep, okay.
And then go straight to questions? Just
let's go straight to
for the sake of
questions.
time.
Are you right with that, Adam? Nothing you wanted to say that wasn't in the paper that you feel people need to know?
No, I mean, the main thing I'm keen to understand is when we come back, when we have I think there's a point between December and February when we need to come back and we need to figure out when that best time is.
So one of the things on our forward plan is yet another update, because we put updates on thanks to the commitment we made. But given that it's now whatever month we are, October, and we're coming back with the full business case hopefully in the spring, do we really want to have yet another update? So that's something I'd like to hear from people if they have any views on that. But any comments or questions on the paper?
So, yeah, just reading this, the modelling, forecasting and impact assessment will be completed by the end of January. So it would seem that would be a useful time just to literally say whether we've actually kept to these timescales or whether it's slipped again. But I think that's probably all you need at that point, isn't it? And then the really big one is when you come to scheme development, having an update on how that's going. Yeah.
So I guess by December we'll have the surveys and the data collection. That will then inform the modelling, forecasting and impact assessment. And then the modelling, forecasting and impact assessment informs the scheme development. So, I guess we've brought forward petitions that were going to happen in December. There's an option to have a brief update in December that sets out what data we've collected, or we can come back in the next committee is early February, which should be, according to this, just after completion of the modelling, forecasting and impact assessment, where we could come back and discuss what that looks like and then get your views, so that feeds into then the final development of the WPL scheme.
Well, February would make sense to me, but yeah. I do have one question. Some of the timescales have been cut down in order to still get to April 2026. What's the impact on your team doing the work that they're having to do it in less time?
I mean, it's the main impact is on the consultants. Obviously, my project manager has a little bit more to juggle, but we've onboarded the consultants now, and they've set out the timescales they think they can work to, which is where these dates come from. So, is with them in terms of collecting all the data and then turning it into something useful. So, we think these timescales are reasonable at the moment.
One thing I may have done is added a bit of extra, because as I said, we've got to work with business to make sure that this is acceptable to them, and I've asked them to bring together the stakeholder panel to make sure that we're modelling the right things, because I don't want business to say, what about this? Why didn't you model that? So we're trying to get business in early to make sure that we don't have a sort of whataboutery in a few months later. Nick.
Thank you. I think that this is a hugely important policy. It would, if a business is offering a perk to their staff that has negative effects for the rest of the city, i.e. a free parking space, then we should move to charge for that and thereby reduce demand for driving into the city, or at least take compensatory payment so that we can do something about it. So I think that we need to do this as soon as possible, which is what I said at the last time that this was presented to us. And I said then that I thought that the programme was too generous and that the early stages looked like they were being dragged out a bit. So I'm disappointed that we've not been able to hit that, and therefore sceptical that the remainder of the programme could be achieved having been cut down there. So I urge the team delivering this to work very closely on the project management to identify issues and make sure that all of the milestones are hit when they say that they are going to be, and get a look ahead to identify issues and solve them before they occur, so that we do deliver this on this programme, or I think ahead would be much more beneficial to the city.
I think we say thank you and challenge accepted, don't we?
Yeah.
Any, Kaz?
Just a very quick comment on the finance advice. You say future implementation requires an IT system and no system have been scoped. There may be a cost risk later. I just wonder if you can make sure that we sort of see what that cost risk might be when we come back to this in the future.
Yeah, we'd certainly expect that to be detailed in the ABC.
I'm going to recommend that we note this report and move on. Thank you, colleagues. So last is our quarterly finance report. This again is a report for information. Alex, you finally have a speaking role.
Well, I presume, should we work on the same basis as the last report, that everyone's read it? The link is actually the appendix A6, which contains the information.
Wonderfully brief. I'm sure people are going to want to talk about the money. David.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you, Alex, for your report. I'm interested in the issue of a £207,000 risk associated with the energy price pressure on the street lighting budget, because I thought our upgrading to LED lights across the city was actually going to save us money.
I used to run street lighting, so they still have to buy a lot of energy. So if the energy price goes up, even though they are reducing it significantly, that can cause a pressure. So I think years ago it was like 23.5 million kilowatt hours. That would have come down to probably at least half that by now. It's still a lot of money that we spend on energy. So fluctuations in the price will still impact, and it's kind of purchased on a regular basis as well.
Got the ability now to dim or brighten lights. Is there any way of offsetting that by actually using that amazing new technology and facility to... does dimming actually save energy?
Dimming saves energy. Obviously has to be done in the right way to retain safety, because one of the key things with lighting is you don't create light, dark. You need to create enough light so that your eyes adjust properly. So dimming is a good opportunity, but you still need to provide enough light for people to get about. And something like turning lights off at night has its own issues with people tripping over pavements and not feeling safe when they're going to shift work and that sort of thing.
I don't think we're in a hurry to turn them off altogether, but if they can be dimmed in a way that helps to mitigate that, that would be possibly helpful. Any other comments? No? Okay. I'm going to say thank you all for your attendance. Thank you all for responding really quickly to the debates that we had at very short notice. The next meeting of the...
Just do a formal noting of that.
Oh, sorry. Apparently... So the recommendation is we note the report as per the recommendation. And now, thank you for your attendance. Thank you for a healthy debate at very short notice. The next meeting, this committee, is on the 4th of December at 5 p.m. It may be necessary to bring forward the start time to 4:30, but we will let you know if that's a possibility. And that may be a slightly less of a possibility now we've heard two debates today, so hopefully we won't need to do that. Thank you all.